Good morning, everybody.
Good.
Welcome to the second day of Perio Orient 2020. I really appreciate your presence yesterday for all the four sessions. And today is the second day and the last day of this orientation program. And today also we have lined up with four lectures for you to listen and take note of. The first lecture will begin right away. I welcome Dr. Nitin Thomas, professor at Subharti Dental College, to welcome our guest speaker and introduce. Welcome, Dr. Nitin.
Good morning, one and all. Warm greetings from Perio Orient 2020. Myself, Dr. Nitin Thomas, professor from Subharti Dental College and Hospital Mirror. On behalf of Perio Orient 2020, first of all, I welcome all students and academicians for this session. So nice to have each and every one of you as our esteemed participants. I hope all are staying healthy and safe. I take this opportunity to thank Perio Orient 2020 mentors for this event. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude over Dr. Parveen Kurwa sir, Dr. Balaji Manohar sir, and my head and teacher, Dr. Mayur Kaushik sir, for hosting this event. Today, I take this privilege to introduce our esteemed speaker, Dr. Madhusudan Sundar Rao Astekar sir. I am delighted to inform all of you that Dr. Madhusudan sir is professor and head oral and maxillofacial pathologist, Institute of Dental Sciences, Bareilly. He has immense passion for teaching and has experience about 18 years. Sir has completed his MDS from Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Science, PMNM Dental College and Hospital, Bhagalkot, Karnataka in the year 2002. He completed his PhD from Pacific Academy of Higher Education and Research, Udaipur in the year 2014 and his fellowship from Indian Board of Forensic Odontology in the year 2019. Sir is coordinator for postgraduate studies and PhD guide. He is an editorial board member and national advisory board member. Sir had delivered many lectures and also has been a guest speaker in various series. He had hosted many series programs as organizing chairman. Sir has 98 paper publications and 5 books at national as well as international level. Well, the list of his accomplishments is too vast to cover in such a short time. So without taking any more of your time, I request sir to please begin with his lecture on the art and science of writing synopsis for dissertation and references. It's over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Nitin Thomas. Thank you so much for a wonderful introduction.
Most welcome.
Dr. Bala, can I start the presentation?
You can start. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Dr. Madhu, it is not audible. You have to do the checkbox.
Okay, sir.
Madhusudan sir, click the checkbox, sir, before sharing. Yeah. Okay.
As you all know, as you all are familiar with this particular jingle bell. So if this is a story, how are you going to understand, how are you going to write a synopsis of this particular story? It goes this way. There was a boy and a girl by the name Jack and Jill who went up the hill together to get some water, but unfortunately, their plan is interrupted when Jack falls down, hits his head and rolls down the hill. Similarly, even the Jill comes back tumbling after him. And Jack runs back to his house and uh, he sleeps on the bed with a brown paper and a vinegar on his head. As you can perceive, the synopsis sketches what transpires in the story. It familiarizes the key individuals, the core storyline, without being exaggeratedly comprehensive or word. Thus, today's title for my presentation, The Art and Science of Writing Synopsis for Dissertation, and a note on referencing. This comes to you from Bareilly International University, Institute of Dental Sciences, Department of Oral and Maxillofacial Pathology. So now we are going to understand what is the meaning of synopsis. Synopsis means sun means together, opsis means seeing. Seeing together means it's a brief summary of something. The synonym for synopsis is the protocol. The protocol means, it's a Greek word. Basically, it means first page. It means a format procedure for carrying out the scientific research. But of these two, synopsis and the protocol, synopsis is more commonly used in case of dentistry, and protocol is more commonly used in medicine. So going with the definition, synopsis is the gist of your planned project, submitted for approval from competent authorities. Now, who are these competent authorities? It may be your ethical committee. It may be for the registration for the universities of your PG and PhD degrees. It may be for the peer reviewing, and also it may be for your financial assistance when you're expecting some financial assistance from ICMR or DGHs or some other bodies like that. And why do you want to do this? Because ethical clearance increases the legitimacy of your project, of your study. Many universities have made it mandatory now for the admission of PG and PhD, that as a part of their training program, that you need to have a synopsis. It also facilitates the reviewer to understand your project at a glance. And how are you going to do it? This is what we are going to go in detail and study today. Synopsis should be concise, clear, and it should be complete. It should be based on scientific facts. You should have the clear art of effective communication. Whatever you have written in the synopsis should be very clear for the next person to understand it. As the saying goes by great Socrates, the only good is knowledge, and the only evil is ignorance. Hence, today we are going to learn how to write a synopsis, and it is very imperative to all the people involved in the medical research. So whenever we talk about a synopsis, today's presentation goes under these headings, and this is the headings where and how your synopsis should be. First thing is, most important is the title. The second is either the introduction, or in which your hypothesis should be very clearly mentioned, followed by aims and objectives, review of literature, and the most important and the core of your synopsis is your methodology, the research methodology, followed by the references and few official requirements. Depends upon the universities which you apply. Talking about the title, how the title should be. It should be brief. It should be neither too short. It should be neither too long. The name of the institution, number of case studies should be avoided as much as possible. See, the title, this is not a news which you're publishing or broadcasting in the TV or in any newspaper. So hence, sensationalization should be avoided in the title as much as possible. And the hypothesis can be included, and what exactly you're going to study, how exactly you're going on with your study, that can be made clear in your title. So just a few examples to understand it in a more better way. Study of ectopic pregnancy. The title is too short. What? Study of ectopic pregnancy. So what? It's not clear. It is not stating the hypothesis. The information is very less in this. So hence, either can we rewrite this as the study of ectopic pregnancy in relation to mortality, morbidity, and intervention in a referral hospital. This gives you at least a clear idea of what you're doing, how you're doing, and where you're doing. Second example, a novel sustained release matrix based on biodegradable polyester and impregnated with bacteriophages and an antibiotic shows promise in the management of infected venous stasis ulcer and other poorly healing wounds. At least I think there are at least 4 ands in one particular sentence. Can you have a sentence like this? No, it is too long. It is confusing. Yes, it is creating some amount of sensationalization, as I told you, by the term using novel. So this can be rewritten as the response of venous stasis ulcer and other poorly healing wounds to a biodegradable matrix impregnated with bacteriophages and antibiotic. I think this is the better way to put it. The meaning is same. If you can rewrite it in a better way so that the person who's reading your synopsis will understand what is your clarity and what you want to do, that will be clear in this in your mind. Another example, fine needle aspiration as a diagnostic tool for papillonodular skin lesions. See, here it's very clear. Fine needle aspiration, you're doing a technique for diagnosing the papillonodular skin lesions, and whether you want to assess whether it is a better one or whether it gives you a proper diagnostic result or not in diagnosing your nodular lesions of the skin, it's acceptable, it's formative, it's very clear. It states the hypothesis. What you want to do, it is clear in this. So hence, title should be more precise. And the take-home message in this title is, it should be, see, as per the Bareilly International University, it should be not more than 3 to 4 lines. That is what university guidelines tells you. And every university have got their own guidelines regarding the title, but this is the most of the things as a more generalized thing which I'll be speaking in this presentation. Next, talking about the hypothesis, or to be very specific, the background or the introduction part. In this introduction, the problem being studied should be precise and clear. It should be very clear what you're studying, how exactly you're studying, what you're going, what you're intended to do it. That should be clear. It should be relevant to the present, and utility to the local and the national level should be mentioned. Understanding the problem aids in constructing the proposal and thus formulate the synopsis. A tentative prediction or explanation of the relationship between the 2 or more variables should be clearly mentioned. Haphazard guess should be avoided. Instead, it should reflect the knowledge, imagination, and the experience of the researcher. It can be formulated by reviewing the literature on the similar topics. Introduction should not be more than 250 to 300 words, and it should not be more than 1 or 2 pages. The most important thing for most of the postgraduate students, when you carry out an experiment and it fails, then you should not change your hypothesis to match as according to your results. No problem. If you carry out a study and you get a negative result, fine, publish the negative result, because negative result also is important. It's as good as important as that of your positive results. So don't worry if you get a negative result. There are so many journals which publish only the negative results. So don't try to manipulate your synopsis, or don't try to manipulate your dissertation when you get a negative result. Negative result is also important. Coming to the aims and objectives. Normally, aim means the statement of intent. What are you intended to do? It should be the broad terms and set out what you hope to achieve at the end of the project. Once you complete your project, come back to your aim. See to it that have you addressed your aim? Have you addressed your objectives properly? So that is why what you do at the end is your aim. And aim is usually, normally we keep aim as one particular aim in a study, and objectives can be many. On the other hand, objectives are specific statements. And what are the steps you take to carry out your study, and how to carry out your study, and what exactly you are going to do it to achieve your aim. Those will be your objectives. Usually aim is 1, objectives are 3 to 4. It should not go more than 1 page. It must pertain to the study problem. You cannot give a vague, or you cannot include something which you are not intended to. So it should be very clear and to the point. The usage of the terms like this is the first study, this is the only study, as much as possible should be avoided. So how exactly should be your review of literature, and what do you mean by the term review of literature? Literature review means it is the work done by others, either at the national or international level, on the similar project. It helps you understand the difficulties faced by those investigators and what all steps they have taken to correct it or to modify it in doing their study. Similarly, you can anticipate similar or additional difficulties in your study and be prepared for those things and approach and address those points easily and comfortably in your study. That is why you need to go through the literature first. So this also helps in constructing and modifying your materials and methods, or the methodology. It identifies various variables involved in your project and helps in conceptualizing their relationships. And the most important, while going through the literature, you will understand whether this study is possible to do it or not. That is the feasibility. So you will be able to judge whether you can take up this study or you can go ahead on this study, the feasibility of this study, what things you can do in your place, what things you cannot do, and what are the things you need to go out of your place to do that. So that is the feasibility. That things will be made very clear when you go through the literature review. How are you going to do this? So the information for this literature review can be gathered from either your journals or through the books or through the published bulletins from standard associations like your bodies like your ICMR, CDC, WHO, and also you have online access to your NLM and PubMed journals. Along with that, you also have, there is a lot of softwares which helps you in preparing this review of literature, which is referred to as this referencing softwares. In this referencing softwares, what you can do is, with the click of a button, you can search all the articles related to that particular topic. And the second thing is, you can actually, by the click of a button, you can copy those things and paste it in your Word copy and completely prepare your literature review by a single click by this referencing software. So I'm going to talk about in brief about the references at the end. And the take-home messages, it should be not more than 8 to 10 references you're supposed to add in your synopsis, and it should be reliable and relevant and easily retrievable, so that if somebody wants to refer it, it should be available for them also to download and refer. And the most important one, which I forgot to tell you, is I think most of the universities in India, we are following the Vancouver system. And there are basically the Vancouver system in most of the universities. And the details I'll be giving you in the end. Talking about the materials and methods or the research methodology. As I told you, this forms the main core of your synopsis. So it should be not more than 3 to 4 pages, research methodology. And research methodology should be discussed under following. These are your following headings on which all your research methodology is being discussed. It starts from the design, it goes to the setting, the samplings, the variables involved in the study, whether to use a control or not to use a control, and what are the methods you carry out, and how do you collect the data, how do you analyze the data, and what statistical analysis you're going to use, and whether does this study does your synopsis requires ethical clearance or not, and based on the inclusion exclusion criteria depending upon your study. These are all the things which is involved in your which should be specifically mentioned in your research methodology. We are going to study one by one now. What is this design? It is a specific plan or the protocol for conducting the study, which allows the investigator to translate the conceptual hypothesis into an operational one. The concept is what you have thought or what idea which you have obtained and how you will go to execute it, how you're going to make it happen. So that is your design, study design. It should be very clearly mentioned. Study design, see, going through all these detail is beyond the scope of this 1 hour's presentation, but I'll try to give you some knowledge regarding the study design, which is most crucial whenever you write your synopsis. This is very crucial. Broadly, you try to understand. It is of 2 types. One is experimental and one is observational. Any study for that matter which you are going to select, you have to classify this. The first is, one is experimental and second is observational. Experimental is basically of 2 types, randomized control trials and non-randomized control trials. And observational one, in observational you have 2 types. One is analytical, one is descriptive. Analytical, you use control group. Descriptive, you don't use the control. Analytical, you have something called as cohort and the case controls. Whereas descriptive, you have epidemiological studies, you have cross-sectional studies, you have case series and the case reports. We'll try to understand one by one in few slides, in few coming slides. So as I told you, the experimental is when you carry clinical trials, example drugs. When you carry out some prophylactic clinical trials, now which is now I think most of the whole world is going through this because of your COVID vaccines. That is prophylactic clinical trials going on, and there are a lot of animal studies. All these things, the field trials, all these things comes under your experimental type of study design. As I told you, observational of 2 types, analytical and descriptive. Analytical includes prospective and retrospective studies. The descriptive one, which gives you the epidemiological, the cross-sectional and natural history of the disease. And the 4th is the operational one. What do you mean by cross-sectional? Cross-sectional means in the present study, in the present time, you're going to carry out a study. I'm not going to go in detail of all these things because of restriction in the time, but the prospective is from the present to the future. A follow-up studies is referred to as your prospective one. Retrospective, from the present, you go back for some time, either for the 6 months or 1 year, you go back and you see what happened. Whether the study which you're going to carry out has got any response in the past, or whether the past effect has got any effect on the present disease. And the case control. Case control is also similar to a retrospective study. And randomized clinical trials, as I told you, clinical trials is most often it is prospective. So as you give a drug today and see its effect for some time later. Here, I'm trying to explain the difference between a cohort and a case control study. A cohort study is one where it is it's more like a prospective one. I'm just with the example I'm trying to tell you. cohort is where smoking causes cancer. Now, you're going to collect the people who are smokers and you collect the people who are non-smokers and see what happens. You follow it for some time and see whether the cancer develops or not. It is a longitudinal study. It requires a lot of follow-up. It requires a lot of expenses. It requires the sample size should be large in this, and it has and the outcome which you're expecting. You're seeing whether smoking causes cancer. Smoking can cause not only cancer, other than that, so many other effects as well. So you have multiple, other than your intended, you have multiple things also to study. So that is a cohort type. When you talk about the case control is like the disease has already occurred. Cancer has already occurred. The cancer is, you're going to select patients who have cancer and patients who don't have cancer. Then you're going to study whether, just an example, you're going to study whether the P53 gene, the mutation in the P53 has got any role in causing oral carcinoma or oral cancer. So you take the cancer patients and you study and you take samples from the retrospective cases who are already exposed, and you study on those samples whether to see whether any P53 gene mutation is present or not. So that is the cases and the controls. You go back and retrospectively you try to assess whether it has got any role in the present existing disease. So that is case control. Here you have a limited sample size. Here expenses is less. Here it's more like an opposite one. Here what you intended, it should be very specific, and the results outcome is only to that particular what you intend. You won't get any extra knowledge of that other than that. So these are the things in case control study. And the one thing which is missing is, as I told you, retrospective, prospective, and cross-sectional one. And the fourth one is an ambidirectional. Sometimes what happens, you collect sample from the past. In the present also you carry out a study, and in future further you follow up those cases for some time as well. So that is referred to as ambidirectional. Now, study settings. Settings. Where exactly you're going to do the setting? Whether you're going to do it in one institution or you use a multiple institution to carry out your study, or how is your facilities available? What are the required facilities? Is it available in your lab or in your college or in your city? Or you have to go outside the city to carry out some specific or some particular or specialized equipment. So you require some specialized equipment or specialized techniques. Or what is your time frame? Are you going to do it in 6 months? Are you going to do it in 1 year? Or what is your follow-up? Or you do have a 6 months follow-up of your cases, or you have 1 year follow-up of your cases. So what is your time frame you are intended for? That should be very clearly mentioned. And last but not the least, your population. You need to be very specific on the population or the sampling that we're going to talk about in few slides. That is sampling. So what is your, how should be your sampling? Sampling itself is an 1 hour lecture. Sampling itself is 1 hour lecture. So I'll go very brief here. It should be the population of the cases, or the population of general people, or the population of specific people receiving some particular treatment, or what, or you carry out some in vivo study or in vitro study, or you do it on some animal models, or you do it on, what is your sample basically, what you intended for, on which you are doing. Broadly, we can classify sampling in 2 types. One is the probability sampling, and the second is non-probability sampling. Probability sampling, you have 4 methods. The first and the foremost is the simple random sampling. Second is the stratified random. Third is cluster, and the fourth is systematic. So simple random, you randomly select whoever you want, whatever you want. Stratified random, so if you have around 5-6 clusters of your population, you're going to select 2 or 3 cases from each cluster. Or in a clustered sampling, you're going to select the whole cluster, either of the whole cluster, either of this or either of this. You're going to select the whole cluster. Or systematic sampling, systematically you take out either, if you're something like that, you select third house, or you randomly select third house, you randomly select fifth house, or you select every fifth patient coming in your OPD, or you select every 10th patient coming in your for the radiological investigation, something like that. So systematic way, every 10th patient you're going to select, every fifth patient you're going to select, something like that. Non-probability. The first is as per your convenience. I'm convenient with this fellow, so I'm going to take this. There is absolutely no criteria. Judgmental. I feel this boy is tall, so I'll select this boy. I feel this boy is short, so I'll select this boy. It's up to your judgment. Or this girl is looking beautiful, so I'm going to select this as my sample. It's up to you. You judgment. You take a decision. The third one, snowball sampling and the quota sampling. I'm going to give an example for this. Snowball sampling. Snowball is first you select 2 people, and those 2 people will select another 3 people, and these 3 people will select another 6 people. So that means you're creating a chain, and like in a snowball where the large ball is kept at the down, and in the smaller one is on the top, and another smaller one is on the top. So like a snowball, when it rolls down, the smaller ball will become big one on the way of going down the hill. Similarly, that's a snowball sampling. Quota sampling. So anyone males above 50 years, that is your quota. That is your inclusion criteria. That is how you take all the males present in the population above 50 years are your samples. This is where you select your sample. Sampling. Yes, it depends on the study design. So what is your design? And the most important is determine the sample size is a bargain between precision and the price. Yes, if you keep your sample size large, the expenses are more. At the same time, the precision is high. You reduce the sample size, your price comes down, but at the cost of your precision. So you have to take a decision whether you want what should be the sample size. Along with that, there are scientific methods in calculating the sample size, of which one example is a software called the GPAR. GPAR software is one sampling detection tool which produces a meaningful results, and also helps in when you select the proper sample, it'll help you in applying a relevant and the proper statistical analysis or statistical methods for your study. So hence, it's not only GPAR, you can also refer a few in your literature for selecting the sample. The previous published literatures can also help you in selecting the sample. So as you know, the target population and the study population should be from your target population, and the study sample which you're selecting from your study population should be out of your bias, and the study sample you carry out and the results of the study sample should be able, after carrying out the statistical analysis, should be able to project on the general population or the target population. That is why you should do a proper sampling. Yes, after doing all these things, your sampling should be reliable and valid. If it is reliable but not valid, not accepted. Low reliability, low validity, rejected. Low reliable, not valid, not reliable, not valid, rejected. It should be reliable and it should be valid. That minimizes your errors in your project or your dissertation. If the errors are high, if you're incorporating a lot of errors, your results will be affected, and your inference, what you draw out of the results, will not carry any meaning. So hence, sampling with minimum error brings about a reliable and valid results. What are these variables? Definitely, every study has got some amount of variables. Those variables are factors that can change in a study. that usually affects the outcome of the result. Why are we worried? Why should we be worried about if some factors change? No, you should be worried because it affects your results. You need to identify those variables and during the planning of your project or your dissertation, and it should be quantified. If that variables, if you don't quantify it in the later, you will not be able to quantify your results and apply statistical analysis properly. And knowledge of various variables will assist in refining your study. It will give you more precision and more authenticity in your study. What are these variables? There are main 4 types of variables: dependent, independent, and which in between which while carrying out your study, there are few things which intertwine in your study. Those are referred to as intertwining variables. And the background, where every study has to have some amount of background variables in background variables. It is the independent variables and dependent. Independent, where the researcher you can manipulate, you can change. And the dependent one, the participant's response depends on the manipulation. You manipulate more of your independent variables, your dependent variable will get affected. So, for example, weight, height, ethnicity, substance exposure, medical history, those are all the independent variables on a dependent variable known as asthma. You can select the samples of having different height, weight, ethnicity. You can select only people having more than 80 kgs. You can select only people having more than 6 feet. But that will affect your a dependent variable known as asthma. So your variables should be uniformly distributed because the amount of manipulation you do with the variables, as I told you, independent variables, your dependent variables gets affected. Similarly, there are independent variable is a poverty and dependent variable is a shorter longevity. I think now this is an opposite one, and even because of the pandemic of COVID-19 pandemic, I think this the relationship doesn't hold good now. So, but in general, apart from the COVID era, the poverty is an independent variable. Dependent variable is shorter longevity, and your intervening variable is the access to your healthcare. The poverty, lack of money, brings about lack of accessibility to healthcare, because of which the death rate sometimes increases. So this is your intervening variable. So similarly, and the background, as I told you, background variables are your age, sex, habits. These are all your background variables, which will be there in your study. Now, talking about the controls, most important. When you concise synopsis, when you prepare a synopsis, yes, you need to think about controls. Control groups increases the validity of your research. It will increase the validity. It will give you something, a bar wherein you can compare and tell you that, yes, this is good, yes, this is bad. You will have one party, you can set a bar. And not necessarily that all the study requires controls. As far as possible, they should be used in all analytical studies. As I told you previously, just to remind you, all analytical studies has controls, even requiring your case control and cohort, which includes your case control and cohort, including your experimental study where you carry out randomized and non-randomized controlled trials. Sometimes controls are required, even in this condition. Yes, the methods. Coming to the methodology. How can you describe your methodology? So here, the researcher will have to describe the method of collection of your data. How exactly you're going to carry out. Whether you will carry out your medical examination, whether a laboratory examination, or whether it will be just a screening method, or it is just a questionnaire-based study, or it is just an interview-based study. How exactly you want to carry out? A sample of your proforma needs to be prepared and attached. Along with the study methods, you need to have a customized case history pro forma, compulsory in your synopsis, to which attached is your informed consent. And the third one is participation information sheet, which I'll go to cover in the end of the presentation. And the cost involved and the financial assistance also needs to be mentioned. The data collection, how are you going to collect the data, the organizational setup, the training of your data team, the logistic support, what you have, and your plans for collaboration with other organizations in case if you have, how you're going to collect the data. You need the in detail step-by-step methods needs to be explained. And the data analysis, now a good analysis leads to a good result. This is the most important part, that is your statistical analysis. You have, it should be planned by using the computer program. It can be data sorting methods may be available, and the statistical methods may be applied. Most of the time, what you people do is, you don't give much of the importance for the statistical analysis in your synopsis part, because in the synopsis, you have not done the study, you have not carried out and you don't have any results, and you don't have any results on which you can apply your statistical analysis. Hence, you try to ignore the statistical analysis part in your synopsis. But and what you do is you write appropriate statistical methods will be used. This is what you write in your synopsis, but this is not acceptable. Appropriate statistical methods will be used. No, you need to mention what method you might apply for this particular planned program. What method is required? What statistical analysis test is required? Whether you want to use a student t-test, whether you use ANOVA, whether you want to use Mann-Whitney U test, whether you want to use what method, what particular test you are going to apply, you need to be specific. You need to mention it in your synopsis and make it clear. Ethical clearance, yes. For the ethical clearance, you prepare your synopsis and present it to the ethical. You give a presentation in your institutional ethical committee. Why is this required? Why is this required? Means it is required because any human and animal studies you carry out, it is required. And it is mandatory for you to have an ethical clearance certificate obtained from your institute, which you have to attach it in your thesis or the dissertation, which it is mandatory for some publication point of view. You go for some publications, the journals make it mandatory for your ethical clearance certificate. Hence, obtaining ethical clearance certificate, your synopsis should be prepared accordingly. And the details of this ethical clearance, what is this? It is a set of ethical principles developed by the medical community, that is World Medical Association. The World Medical Association has developed this set of medical ethics, and it is being considered as a cornerstone document for the human research ethics. Initially, it was the original version was obtained in somewhere in 1964 when the meeting of this World Medical Association held in Helsinki. This is the place, and somewhere in UK. So that is why it has been mentioned as Declaration of Helsinki. And from then till now, there are a lot of revisions has been happening. And I think 2013 there was a 7th revision. If I'm not wrong, there is the 8th edition has also been in the process, or it is might be would have come across, might be published or something. So this is regular revisions is happening, and they're bringing about a lot of modifications, tricks. And talking about the Indian context, we have ICMR, Indian Council for Medical Research, have got its own guidelines for your ethical clearance, and we as a Indian in Indian scenario, we follow the ICMR guidelines. Now coming to the references, the most important part and the most confusing part for all of you people. And then I think I'll try to give you I'll try to make it easy for you people. If you can understand it, I think it will be easier for you to carry out your synopsis or complete your synopsis. There are two terms, reference and bibliography. Most of the places you would have come across this. References are those things, are those lists which you use in your text and you put it at the end. That means the references you You've used only those references in your text which you are going to mention it at the back or at the end of your synopsis or your dissertation. In other words, the list of references, references which you have given in the is end has already been used in your text. Whereas in case of bibliography, whether you use or you don't use in your text, you just give a list of references at the end of your dissertation. That is known as bibliography. Normally, most of the universities in India, we follow references. For example, we try to search one topic. I'll make it more simpler one. Leukoplakia. A simple example is a leukoplakia. I try to search the treatments of leukoplakia, in which and more specific, the cryotherapy in leukoplakia. Cryotherapy in leukoplakia. While searching in the management of leukoplakia, cryotherapy in the management of leukoplakia. In searching the management of leukoplakia, I get so hundreds of articles. And cryotherapy, I'll get around 15-20 articles, for example. So putting 20 articles at the end of the synopsis or a dissertation is called as a reference. Putting all 100 articles at the end of my dissertation is known as bibliography. Okay, so in most of the universities we follow reference, not the bibliography. So while drafting your synopsis, take care that you use the proper terminologies. Broadly, there are two types of referencing system which is available in all over the world. That is known as parenthetical, and second is notational. Parenthetical, that means within the brackets. Notational, that means number, notation, 1, 2, 3, 4, numbering. So when you use this parenthetical, and so many times there is a mix-up of these two, most of the journals, they carry on. The parenthetical, coming to the parenthetical system. Parenthetical is the author date or the author page system. In the brackets, you're going to mention the author's name and the date or the year or the page number. So this is the format for your parenthetical system. This is most commonly followed in the Harvard system. Harvard is UK based, and the UK they usually follow the parenthetical system within the brackets. That is, within the brackets you will do it in the text, and at the end of the text you give the list of references. In the end of the list of references, this is the format which you are going to follow. That is the author's name, comma, the year, comma, the title of the article within inverted commas, comma, the name of the journal, comma, the volume number, the comma, the issue number, comma, the page numbers, full stop. The reason why I'm stressing on this comma and the full stop is this is where you go wrong. This is where you go wrong. Next, coming to the notational system. This is also referred to as the Vancouver system, which we routinely follow in our universities. Most of the Indian universities, we follow Vancouver system. And you might come across the parenthetical system when you go for the publications in some UK-based journals and some other places. So you should know. And talking about the preparation of synopsis, I think most of us, we follow the notational system where we give the number as we follow in the text. We give, according to the text, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we give the number of the references as it is being cited. And the most important one, which every one of you should know, every one of you should have a knowledge, is this system of references, which you will be following in most of the universities in India. That is author's name, first author name, comma, second author name, comma, third author name, full stop. After author's name, full stop. The title, full stop. The name of the journal, full stop. The year of publication, here is a semicolon. After the year, you give a semicolon. Volume, within the brackets, the issue, and a colon, and the page range, and a full stop. In the page range, if you have noticed, it is 258 to 260. 2 and 2 are repeating, hence 2 was not supposed to be used. In case if it ranges from 258 to 259, then 2 and 5 should not be used. It is 258-9. The repetition should be avoided in the page range. Some journals accept repetition, some journals don't accept repetitions. And some journals, they follow the superscript. Some journals, they don't follow the superscript. Some journals still expect you to put the series of numbers within the bracket. Some doesn't expect within the bracket. But the notational system doesn't expect a bracket. It's a superscript and is placed in the text. Finally, whatever it is, it should be accurate and precise. The comma, the full stop, the semicolon, the colon, the spacing, it should be very precise and very clear. And one more thing which I forgot to tell you is the journal title. The journal title. See, this title is Journal of National Cancer Institute, but we've used the short form here. How can you use this short form? Who's going to tell you this short form? What is the spelling of this short form? See, the cancer doesn't have a shortcut. Journal, the short form is J. Institute, the short form is INST. Cancer doesn't have a short form. India doesn't have a short form. Brazil, BR. So like that. So these short forms are available in PubMed. It is the PubMed index journals which gives you the short form. If you put the title at PubMed.com, if you go to the website PubMed.com and put your title and put the full title of your journal, it will give you the shortcut of it. And only the shortcut which is there in the PubMed journals are only supposed to be used in your synopsis. If the journal is not there in the PubMed, then you're not supposed to use the short form. Short forms are used only those which are there in the PubMed. Non-PubMed journals, you're not supposed to use the short forms. So, finally, what the things which you should use as a reference and what things which you should not use as a list of the reference. Journals, as I told you, journals, abstract, books, thesis can be used as a reference. Your unpeer-reviewed publications, personal communications, unpublished works should be avoided as much as possible. Yes, you can use the websites also. You can use some URL. You can use the web address as your as a reference for the reference, but avoid as much as this unpeer-reviewed works as much as possible. Yes. How many references should I include in the paper? This is as in since we are talking more specifically for the synopsis part. Synopsis, or in general, when I talk about a publication part, in general, when I talk about a publication, it should be the 50% should be not less than 5 years old, 40% should be not less than 10 years old, and 10% should be not very old. This is a general rule which we follow for a publication, for an international PubMed index publications, most of the time. Why? Because, see, as I told you, cryotherapy in the management of leukoplakia. Hundreds of articles you get. Hundreds of articles you get in the management of leukoplakia. But which articles you are going to use? Leukoplakia treatment has been happening from years together, from centuries. Yes, you cannot use a very old one. There is no point in using the oldest one because the knowledge has been so updated now. You cannot keep telling what happened 100 years back. Come on, what is the current scenario? Tell me now. What improvement you have now? Okay, we know 100 years things we know, but what is the improvement you have done now? So that is what we need to know. So that is why it should not be very old. 40% less than 10 years. 10% can be very old, but not very, very, very old for that matter. And synopsis, as I told you, that is for the publication in general. Original research, usually they limit around 20 to 30 articles. Review articles, absolutely, there is no limit. And case reports, yes, they do have around 10 to 12, 15 maximum. That's what few journals they suggest. And coming to your synopsis part, yes, references should be not more than around 10 to 15 references are sufficient for you for including in the synopsis. It should not be beyond 2 pages. That is what our BIU guidelines tells you. It should not be more than 2 pages. So similarly, coming to the most important part is here. softwares available for this references. See, references is the biggest headache which you have, which you come across while writing the synopsis. Okay, you have collected the articles, you know what to write, you've already written it now. Now, putting a reference is a big headache. To make it more simple, there are a lot of softwares available. There are few softwares which are free, few softwares which are paid. You need to purchase it. Some are lifetime free, some are yearly subscription. Some once the lifetime you have to pay and subscribe it. There are so many softwares available, of which I'm just giving you the list of the softwares available. I'm nowhere promoting any software or demoting any software. I personally am using a software called EndNote and Mandely. Mandely is in elsewhere. They have this Mandely, and some more common is your reference manager.
It's 11 o'clock.
Reference manager is one of the good softwares. Few are paid, few are, as I told you, paid. So you need to check and you can use if you are more tech savvy. I think you know what the beauty of this software is. एक बार मेहनत लगेगा आपका, एक बार आपको पूरे एक रेफरेंस नंबर डालने में एक बार मेहनत लगेगा. Once you need to put the effort, and after that, click of a button, you can change the whole content. Click of a button, you can change from Harvard system, you can change it to Vancouver system, you can change it to API system, you can change it to hundreds. I mean, there are 500 types of referencing styles available in the software. Click of a button, and depends upon the journal. You just have to search the journal. There are 500 journals available in that software. Select the journal and click the journal. Your whole article is arranged according to that journal specification of your references. That's it, done. A click of a button will solve your problem. So the software is so easy. So for that you need to master it, or for that you need to be slightly, it is technical. Not all softwares are user-friendly. To be very frank with you, not all softwares are user-friendly. You need to, once you need to go through it properly or understand it. Yeah, there are so many journals. If you've prepared your manuscript articles based on this software, you have a separate submission portal for that. For example, biotechnic and histochemistry. Biotechnic and histochemistry is journal wherein click here to submit a new manuscript and click here to submit an EndNote manuscript. If you have prepared your manuscript with the EndNote, you just have to upload it. Rest everything it does it. Click of a button, it will take your title, abstract, keywords. For that, you need to separately paste it in every column, in every section when you upload a manuscript. When you upload a manuscript, you will come to know. I think most of you might be there who have uploaded the manuscript. So you need to put the title in the title block. You need to paste the abstract in the abstract block. You need to paste the keywords in the keyword block. It's like that. So here, click, everything is done. Yeah. See, before I add a note on plagiarism, the references will not end, or your synopsis presentation will not end. Plagiarism, the most important part. I think some of you would have heard about this name, or some of you wouldn't have heard this name. Plagiarism. Yes, there are now a lot of guidelines has been issued even from the UGC for that matter. There were no guidelines all these years, even in India. Yeah, there were a few abroad, but in India it was rampant. Now even the UGC has come out with the guidelines. So what is this plagiarism? Plagiarism is presenting the words, ideas, images, sounds, or even the creative expression of others as your own, and not even giving a proper credit. You don't even bother to tell that I've taken it from this fellow, or I've borrowed it from this fellow, or this is there in this particular article. The synonyms for the plagiarism is piracy, theft, stealing, poaching. Can you imagine the impact of the term plagiarism? This has become rampant now in academic world, in India especially. academic world. Yes, it is there in most of the other countries also. They have come out with so many rules and regulations. Now the cyber laws are being getting strict in India. Yes, now even this also, even the universities, UGC is also being strict, and even in our university, we are strictly following. Even in the medical and even in the PhD synopsis presentations and the thesis, we are evaluating even the synopsis now. We are passing even the synopsis through this plagiarism checking. So there are two types of plagiarism. Intentionally you do, unintentionally also you can do. Unintentional, okay, fine. It is because of careless paraphrasing, poor documentation, and failure to use your own sentences in that. So that means you just copy it. Intentionally, yes, you copy some friend's work, you borrow it, and you just cut, copy, paste. Now cut, copy, paste has become rampant now. You cut, copy, paste, and you don't even bother from where you have taken, from where you have done. You've cut, copy, pasted it. In spite of that, you have given the reference. Okay. See, I'm telling you, cut, copy, pasting itself is a plagiarism. Now you've cut, copy, pasted it, and you have put a reference for that. Is it a plagiarism? I'll answer this within a minute. Okay. There are so many excuses. Think about this. There are so many excuses for this plagiarism. Assignment was boring. It's okay if I didn't get caught. Everyone does it. My teachers expect too much from me. I was busy. Yeah, I've got to get an admission in certain colleges. My parents expect A grade. So what can I do? I do it. These are all the excuses which you give. How serious is the problem? This is a study which has been published, where 4,500 students in 25 colleges and universities, they have been questioned and asked, where they have told you 72% have admitted serious cheating, that is plagiarism. It is there even from the schoolings now. That is what's been inculcated into the minds of the children. That is why it has become so rampant. Hence, we need to curb this even in kindergarten or even in school only, not to cut, copy, paste, or not to just copy it, or to use our own, to make a habit of creating our own sentences. That is referred to as paraphrasing. I'll deal those things in detail now. Plagiarism. Yes. Do I have to cite everything? Okay, I've copied it. I told you, I've copied it from a book. Okay, I've given the reference number. Is this plagiarism? Is this plagiarism? Yes. It is plagiarism. It is plagiarism. Not just giving the reference and copying the whole element as ditto and putting it in your synopsis. It is a plagiarism. And for this, yes, what is not plagiarism? I'll tell you what is not plagiarism. I'll come to the thing. When you use your own words, when you write in your own sentences, it is not plagiarism. When you use some common knowledge, which is given at least in 3 different sources. Example, George Washington wore wooden dentures. That's a common knowledge. When you write a common thing, you need not have to give reference. That is not plagiarism. Then how to avoid it? Then what is the issue? Okay, I'll change few words and sentences and I'll make it of my own. Okay, I'll change few sentences and I'll make it as a one. And I'll give a reference. If I don't give a reference, then this is plagiarism. Paraphrasing, why? Because writing in our own words, paraphrasing is referred to as paraphrasing. And the idea from where you have taken that is somebody else's, right? So then you need to give a reference for that. If you've taken an idea, or if you've taken the words, or if you've taken some images, then also it is plagiarism. You need to give a reference. You need to tell that, no, I've taken this idea from this fellow and I've written in my own words. That is paraphrasing. So how serious is this? It starts from mild, moderate, severe, very profound, immense, terrible, extreme. In identity theft, you've been caught. See, there are so many articles which is published now are getting rejected, retracted. or getting complaints, or the editors are getting complaint which after the article has been published. Why? Because there is a lot of plagiarism being present. So the plagiarism, there are two issues. Not only the moral, there is a moral obligation, but also it is a legal issue. Plagiarism falls in between these two. Moral, that means you take, when you don't say from where you have taken, it becomes your moral duty. And when you take it without permission, that is copyright infringement. It's a legal issue. So when you take it without permission and pass it off as your own work, there you get caught with both moral as well as a legal issue, and that is your plagiarism. Hence, you need to be very careful while dealing with that. How can you avoid plagiarism? There are three things. You use a direct quoting in the inverted commas. It is not a plagiarism. You quote it and you give a reference within the inverted commas you give. That is not a plagiarism. You paraphrase it. It is not a plagiarism. You summarize it. You can avoid plagiarism. Quotation. As I told you, directly give the quoting within the inverted commas and give the reference. It is not a plagiarism. You paraphrase it. Means putting someone else's idea in your own words and giving a reference is not plagiarism. Just few examples for you. The need for investors to earn a commercial return may put upward pressure on prices. The need for profit is likely to push upward pressure. This is how you paraphrase it. Paraphrasing is just not simple rearranging or rewording. You need to understand what author is saying, and you have to write the whole concept in your own words. Example, privatization has failed on several counts. Baylis and McKinley, 2007, pointed out that the failure of privatization is due to many factors. This is how you need to paraphrase it. One more example. The region, Sub-Saharan Africa, is widely perceived as risky by investors. The area, Sub-Saharan African area, is widely perceived as risky by investors. How do you write it? How do you paraphrase it? Investment in the region is considered a significant risk. Bracket, Baylis 2003 has quoted this. This is how you paraphrase it. One more example. This is how. This is one more example where you have to rephrase it. Not only just changing your synopsis, synonyms. See, the most easiest thing to do is, see, this is a tip for you, but don't do it. But this is a tip for you, but to some extent, I think you can reduce plagiarism. But this is not the only way to reduce plagiarism. You need to paraphrase it. The tip is, whatever sentence you have written, the words in the sentence, you can select the word, right click, you can search for an synonyms and change that particular word. The meaning remains the same, the word changes. So that the complete sentence is slightly changed, but it is not paraphrased. Just changing the synonyms will to some extent avoid plagiarism, but this is not the only way to do it. You need to paraphrase it. So paraphrasing is the only way to avoid plagiarism. So summarize.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you speak up a little bit?
Summarizing. Summarizing is, you have to summarize the whole thing. You reduce the amount of words. You take away a lot of words. You use only the important, the keywords, and the whole thing, the whole seminar is just 3 lines. Blah blah blah. This is your summary. So when you summarize it, there is no. You try to avoid plagiarism. So this the same thing which I have summarized it here again. How you detect the plagiarism? I'll take another 10-15 minutes. How do you detect the plagiarism? There are 2 ways in detecting: the manual and the computer based. The manual is your lot of softwares available, and in that
speed up a little bit.
In this you have a software based, and there is in this source code based. So there are 2 types. When you have a global similarity and when you have local similarities. How do you carry out this plagiarism detection? I mean, not to go in detail about all these things. There are so many detection methods where there's something known as fingerprinting. When you have a local similarity, it will compare two things and it will give you the result. And you have a substring and bag of words analysis, where the complete term, the sentences are being searched and the report is being generated for the synopsis for your plagiarism. And the third is citation based, and the sentences and the references which you have used in that particular sentences, no. So that is known as citation. Those citations are checked and in the whole net, and that will give you the result. So there are 3-4 ways of patterns of computer-based analysis of your detection of plagiarism. There are so many software tools available now in the few are paid, as I told you, few are free, few are paid. And I personally am using this plagiarism checker software and PlagScan plagiarism checker. Out of my experience, I think PlagScan works fine, and few are available even online. I think all these days there is one plagiarism checker, advanced plagiarism checker, which is available online. I think it has got a limited version online. You can try even that. And these are all the list. Authenticate is one a standard, and even the most UK-based journals, they use this Authenticate software. There is something known as Viper. There is something known as Flagware, CopyLeaks. There's so many softwares available. You can try for yourself. Okay, if you have difficulty in trying this software, there are even hundreds of services available now on the internet. Just pay and get your plagiarism checked. Some are free, some are paid. You can get it. You can even try those things. And the take-home message for all the students of who have joined the post-graduation and who are experiencing, and this is your first-hand experience for writing a synopsis, is a dissertation is a document that contributes new knowledge. Or for that matter, even the synopsis to some extent. It is the student's responsibility to ensure that manuscript contains original information free from plagiarism. It is not only a synopsis, now even the dissertation will be scanned for plagiarism. All these years, I'll give you my example. When I did my PG, there is nothing called plagiarism. The term of plagiarism was not at all existing. So now it has become so rampant. The synopsis also we project for plagiarism checking. And thesis in our university, especially now for the PhD thesis, we have started, and now we're coming slowly. We're coming for the MBBS and the BDS as well. We're planning to do it. So it is your responsibility that it is the synopsis we have prepared is out of plagiarism, and your guide and the co-guide will help you in doing it. Last but not the least, when you come to the requirements of your to submit your synopsis, normally the structure of your synopsis will go this way. This is the whole structure of your synopsis, how you are supposed to be there. And there are some modifications based upon your university guidelines and your institutional guidelines. There are some 19-20 ka changes rahega, but most of the things remain the same. And apart from this, there are some additional documents which I was speaking in the initial phase. That is, first and the foremost is your pro forma. Pro forma is nothing but your case history pro forma, customized case history pro forma. See, any study you carry out, in case the patients are involved, you need to have a customized case history pro forma, modified as per your studies requirement. Second, in 1 or 2 pages, you can concise it and keep it ready. And it has to be attached at the end of your synopsis. Second thing is your patient information sheet. Before patient information sheet, that means in case the patients are involved in your study, you will explain the patient before you carry out a study. And the information, what you're going to tell to the patient is written in this. Before you take a sample from that particular patient, you explain the patient that what you're going to do. That is patient information sheet, in which the details will be written. And the third one is informed consent. and you take it and assigned informed consent to be very specific. There may be verbal as well, but assigned informed consent is more authenticated, so that tomorrow you will not be in a problem. Practicing from now will help you keeping the same practice even in your clinical practice as well as in your practice as well. Informed consent, signed informed consent. In this, you will write in detail what exactly you're doing, the procedure, what you're doing, and for which you're taking a consent from the patient. And at the bottom, patient will give his consent in the with signature. If he is illiterate, with at least a thumbprint will also do. Thumbprint is as equivalent as that of signature, even in the legal matters. So thumbprint will also do. So having these three things, a format of all these three things is mandatory along with your synopsis when you submit it for your approval, either for the ethical committee or for the university. And as per our university guidelines, the whole synopsis should be not more than 5 to 8 pages, beginning from your introduction till the references, excluding your certificates at the in the beginning. Certificates are excluded, and at the last your annexures are excluded. From the introduction to the references, it should not be more than 5 to 8 pages. So finally, concluding, a good synopsis will give maximum information in minimum words. So that is why we have a restriction on the page numbers. In the minimum words, it should have the maximum information. That is what a good synopsis will do. A well-convinced synopsis will go a long way in convincing everyone, even the ethical committee, the university, as well as the reviewers, in your ability to conduct the project. Even in case of the financial assistance also, these are the 4 places where you want to submit your synopsis. The university, the ethical committee, the reviewer, and the financial assistance for the financial assistance. So all these people, if it is a well-convinced one, they'll do the needful for you, for your proposal. Yes, last but not the least, a synopsis is incomplete if it is not signed. That means your guide, your signature, your guide signature, and your head of the department signature is mandatory for you to submit your synopsis. So without the signatures, so without your guide, your co-guide, and your HODs, the synopsis or this conceptualization of the synopsis will not see the light of the day. So keep it in mind, and these are my references. Yes. This presentation will not end without my acknowledgement to Dr. Balaji Manohar, Principal, Kalinga Institute of Dental Sciences, and the principals of both Sri Siddhartha Dental College as well as Subharti University, for their kind gesture, for giving me an opportunity to present my topic in front of such an excellent audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. So we have 2 questions in chat box. The first one is there any free software to check plagiarism?
Yes,
Name one
there
or two.
as I told you, plagiarism, advanced plagiarism checker, it's a free software. But now all the softwares which are available they have made the trial versions are free. Most of them have made it paid now, but this advanced plagiarism checker was initially it was free for some time, but now even they have started the paid one. So it is free for the trial version is free for 13-14 days, something like that. And they have the limitations for your checking.
Okay, sir.
There is a limitation where you can check only the few pages or few words or something like that. They have added the restrictions now. Absolutely free, it is difficult to get. Or the trial versions, you can use it for some time.
Right. So one more question is there. Can we have control group in cross-sectional studies?
Yes, control groups, it depends on you, on which you're going to see. As I told you, control can be as a baseline on which you're going to compare.
Okay,
it can act as a baseline. on which you can compare and assess. And then it is not necessary to have a control in all the study, as I told you. Only then, if it is required, you can have a control. And if it is not required, you see, if you want to compare three products, if you want to compare three products and see to it that, for example, any three respiratory materials,
Yes.
glass ionomer and compomer or something else, resin based. The three metals you want to compare and see which has got a good micro leakage strength or good adaptability to the tooth by carrying out a micro leakage study. In this, you need not have a control.
Right.
See, so micro leakage, whether it happens in three, which is best, which avoids micro leakage, is the best material for you. So which was the least micro leakage is the best material for you. So
Yes.
we having a specific control not required.
Right,
It's up to you.
So, okay, sir. Thank you for this marvelous presentation, sir. And it has been a great learning experience for all of us. I thank all respected mentors for giving me this opportunity and their support and blessings. With this, I would like to over to you, Balaji, sir. Be healthy and safe. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Dr. Nitin. Dr. Madhu, thank you very much for your presentation. As a token of appreciation, please accept this certificate. The soft copy will reach your email as early as possible. Thank you very much.
Sir, I have received the soft copy.
There. I will send it to you. I will send it to you. Right.
Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Madhu, for
Thank
an
you, sir.
informative session. A lot of compliments are coming in the chat box. Probably you can also read them. Thank you very much. Then we will not waste much time. We will go on to the next session. I invite Dr. Satish CP, Associate Professor from Periodontics, Sri Siddhartha Dental College, to please join in and introduce our next speaker, Dr. Ashish Nichani.
Thank you, sir, for providing me this opportunity. The second session will be on Journal Club and critical appraisal of evidence by none other than our former editor of Indian Society of Periodontology, Dr. Ashish B. Nichani. I would like to introduce Dr. Ashish B. Nichani, who is a professor with over 20 years of teaching experience. He graduated from SDM Dental College, Dharwad in 1996 and went on to complete his master's in periodontics from the same institution in 1999. Since then, he has been involved in teaching both graduate and postgraduate courses in the specialty of periodontics. He is an active practitioner and maintains a practice limited to the field of periodontics and implant dentistry with emphasis on regenerative periodontics. He was the editor of the prestigious Journal of the Indian Society of Periodontology from 2010 to 2016, Treasurer of Indian Society of Periodontology from 2016 to 2019, and an EC member in the Indian Society of Periodontology, Indian Society of Prosthodontics, Restorative Dentistry and Periodontology, that is ISPRP. He is also a member of the Asia Pacific Society of Periodontology, life member of Indian Dental Association, and has been conferred the prestigious fellowship of the Perio Academy, USA. He is a reviewer and an editorial board member for various national and international journals. He is an undergraduate and postgraduate examiner in various universities in India. His active interest in continuing dental education has seen him lecture on several courses and conduct various workshops at both the state and national level. He also has several national and international publications to his credit. He is currently the professor of periodontics at Oxford Dental College and Hospital, Bangalore. I welcome you, sir. I request you to please take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Satish, for your kind introduction. Without further ado, I have been asked today to talk on the art of presenting a journal club and to critically appraise evidence related to that. If you see the definitions of these two words, science and communication, science is a department of systemized knowledge. People often ask me what attracted me to this specialty. I often say science is what attracted me. As periodontists, we all share a passion for scientific discovery and a willingness to adapt our treatments when research supports a new way of improving our patients' oral health. Regeneration, implants, periodontal plastic surgery, tissue engineering, these are just few of the advancements we have embraced, and we are always poised for the next frontier. Communication is defined as the exchange of thoughts, messages, or information. Today, we are expected to work faster, achieve more, and stay ahead of the curve. And information drives what we do. It affects how we plan our treatment and whether our patients follow through. It determines whether our referral sources turn to us, do the work themselves, or they send our patients across town to another practitioner. So, what is a journal club? A journal club is a group of individuals who meet regularly to critically evaluate recent articles in scientific literature, or as an educational meeting in which a group of individuals discuss current articles, providing a forum to keep up with literature. It is usually organized around a defined subject in basic or applied research or clinical advances. Participants can voice their views on topics as the appropriateness of the research design, the statistics involved, and the methods that were used, etc. A journal club article provides questions and discussion points to stimulate a discussion in which participants can evaluate new research and its applicability to clinical practice. It assists us in critically analyzing research to promote a better understanding of the research process and to advocate evidence-based practice. This presentation will deal with how to prepare an outstanding journal club presentation and how to make journal clubs interesting. So, for some trivia, the first journal clubs were described from the memoirs and letters of Sir James Paget, a British surgeon. He said they were conducted in St. Bartholomew's Hospital in London in the mid-1800s, and they described them as some of the pupils making themselves into a kind of a club. They had a small room over a baker's shop near the hospital gate where we could sit and read the journals. Sir William Osler described the first formalized journal club at McGill University in Montreal in 1875. The original purpose was for the purchase and distribution of periodicals to which he could still afford to subscribe. This is true even today. Most of the journals that we subscribe to are highly prized. Therefore, journal clubs also serve as a source to disseminate information once a person gathers that article and shares it with others. So why do you need to develop a journal club in your institution or department? One, to keep current with the new knowledge, to discuss controversies, to promote better understanding of the research process, to learn to evaluate the strength of evidence, improve the ability to critically appraise research, and to teach reading skills, to promote implementation of new knowledge in practice and become abreast with the latest clinical research, to improve patient outcomes by encouraging research utilization, to generate ideas for future research. It is especially helpful if you are implementing evidence-based practice. It can also be used to demonstrate continuing dental education as we are doing today and to promote social contact. Now, there could be various formats which are employed for a journal club. It could be one article, one journal, or one topic which is taken into consideration. Now, when you choose one particular article for the journal club, the preparation time is usually less. Your participation or the group participation is eased. there is a potential for short, frequent sessions, and it is a good method for initiating the group for a more comprehensive review later. When you pick up one issue of a journal, it is appealing to members of a particular society or a specialty like ours. For example, if you pick up the Journal of Periodontology or the Journal of Indian Society of Periodontology. Now, you have to remember, if the group is diverse in interests, for example, if you have an interdepartmental journal club, then you should pick up a journal with broad appeal. For example, a journal like British Dental Journal or Journal of American Dental Association. You should also remember to be current with the latest findings in the field by scheduling the meeting after that particular issue of the journal is released. You can also choose a single topic on which you can present a journal club. Now, this provides coverage of all retrievable studies in one session. However, you will require more time to prepare and conduct this session. And if it is a narrow topic, it may not be of interest to all the members of your journal club. Let's go to the title of the article. When you select a journal article, the title must be interesting. The contents must be clearly indicated. It should be short, active, and indicate the work which was taken up. The article should also include the authors and the details of the place of work. So when you choose the authors, they should have good reputation for original work. They should be an authority on the subject, and you should consider the quality of work which has been taken up. The MORE system is something which I would like to highlight here. The McMaster online rating of evidence created by the McMaster University is used to identify the highest quality published research. You can find the details in the link which I've highlighted here. Always remember, when there is more evidence on a particular topic, it would take less time for you to discuss that particular topic. What is the anatomy of a journal article? There are 5 questions which need to be answered. 1. Why did the author start? That means the introduction. How did you find it? That means the review of literature. What did the author do? That includes the materials and the methods. What did the authors find? Those are the results. And what does it mean? That is the discussion. So when you take up the introduction of the journal article, you need to realize what is the problem, what is the nature of the problem, the magnitude of the problem which is being addressed, and has relevant literature been quoted. We come to the materials. What were the selection criteria used by the authors? What is the sample size employed? Now I've distinguished between small n and the capital N here. So the capital N includes the entire study population or the sample size, whereas the small n would refer to the subset of the population. For example, if you have recruited 60 patients in your study and you have 4 groups of 15 each, so the number 15 would be the small n, whereas 60 would be the capital N. You also need to know whether controls were employed in the study. What were the methods used? Techniques used to carry out the study? The units of measurement which were employed by the authors? Is this study reproducible? And what were the parameters tested? In the results, how have the authors presented? How have they analyzed the data? Have they used tables, photographs, diagrams, for example, bar diagrams, or graphs? When they have discussed, what are the major conclusions? You need to view your results in light of other people's findings. Discuss their meanings. How do they alter or advance current ideas? And do they present scope for future research? What questions do you need to ask? Is it an original work? Is it scientifically reliable? Is it clinically important? And is it suitable to be read by you? What are the general rules for a journal club? You need the summary to be circulated in advance. You need to refer to cross-references. Collect sufficient information regarding the subject. You need to read the article, but also critically appraise it. Now, yesterday, Dr. Balaji Manohar had very promptly he had pointed out that clinical record keeping and reference cards is something which he had started in his college. So these are some examples for handouts for reading a journal article. You can employ any. This one employs the title of the journal, the year, volume, number and pages, the authors and titles. Similarly, you have a more elaborate design for the handout, a still more elaborate and a summary and critiquing table for your research report. When you comment on the journal article, you need to address the problem. What is the problem? Why did you select this particular article? What major or landmark studies or references are cited? What is the author's objective? Does he or she have a working hypothesis? If so, what is it? In the materials and methods, what was the sample size? NNT refers to the number needed to treat. What is the method used? What are the major dependent and independent variables? How was bias minimized? And how were the results analyzed? In the results, what did the authors find? And how are the results presented? In the discussion and conclusions, you need to tell us what are the author's major conclusions? What are his minor or subsidiary conclusions? Are these conclusions rational and directly dependent on the results? Are they adequately justified by the author in discussion? Does the author or does the study raise any questions which need further investigations? When you evaluate the article as a whole, you need to find out what are its strong points and what are its weaknesses. If there are any weaknesses, can these be rectified? If so, how? Now, we learn from many sources, people, books, audiovisual media, etc. But by far, the most important source is the book or the print medium. And as students, we are bound to spend a lot of time reading. We all know how to read. Do we really know? Look at the meaning of the word read in the following sentences. I could read his expression easily. If I have read the situation correctly, reading between the lines, we can guess he is unhappy. I think I can read your intentions. In all of the above, the word read means understand. And this is the meaning that should be uppermost when you read for the purpose of learning. Reading to learn consists of understanding, memorizing, and recollecting. How you need to get the most out of what you read. You do not have to read every type of material word by word. You must remember to be flexible in your reading, and you must be clear in your mind about the purpose of your reading. So, SQ4R is a simple method of planning your reading so that it is more active, more purposeful, and much more productive. SQ4R stands for survey, question, read, recollect, review, and reinforce. Now, when you are surveying a book, you need to read the title page, noting the general subject area, author's name and qualifications, and date of publication. You need to read the preface, which will tell you whether it is worth reading. You need to read the table of contents, which tells what topics are dealt with and also tells how the author has organized them. Leafing quickly through the entire book, you should note the chapter and section headings and reading the end of chapter summaries, looking for the charts and the figures. When you survey a chapter, you need to look at the first and the last paragraphs and read their summaries. In the heading, you need to be aware of the sizes of the letters used for different headings. They tell you which topics come under which topic. They are the keys to the author's structure of ideas. Now, when you question, write down the questions you will be able to answer when you have read the chapter properly. You need to note the headings and subheadings you have noted in your survey. This should always be a seed for more questions in your mind. Questions can be your own or other people's. For example, the authors, examiners, or your teachers. Now, when you read again, you must look for the main idea in each paragraph. This is usually found as the first or the last sentence of the paragraph. Then you need to pick out important details in the paragraph which clarify, support, or illustrate or develop the main idea. There are some signposts which you need to look out for. There are visual signposts. That means words which are printed in italics, words which are underlined, words in the bold font face type, the numbering of points, or the lettering of points. Similarly, there are some verbal signposts, like words and phrases commonly employed. These are, firstly, on the other hand, however, for instance, furthermore, therefore. When you recollect, write down the key points you remember. Make brief notes of the main ideas and any details you think are important. Notes must be spent on the recollect step. Suppose you recollect around 50% or more. You can't make notes without thinking. This actively helps you to understand, and the note taking will also help you to remember the material. When you review, you need to do a quick repeat of the previous 4 steps. That means survey. Look again at the summaries and headings. Remind yourself of the questions you asked. Can you answer them all? Reread the text to see that you have recollected everything of importance. Complete your recollection by filling in points you have left out in your previous recollection and correcting any faults. Reinforce. When you are trying to learn fresh material, try to recollect and review material you have already read. Reinforcement will ensure that you do not forget. This time, you take to recollect and become lesser and lesser. By adopting SQ4R, you will be. How can you read faster? Is reading faster, and you can also increase or improve vocabulary. How you get through the reading material is not as important as how much of material gets through to you. When you present a journal club, you need going to tell them what you told them. When you pick the paper, pick a good paper, a good journal article, one you think that will appeal to the majority of the audience. Keep it simple. Pick something which you have expertise with. Importantly, pick something which is current and has been published in the last few months. Pick something which has interesting results and or techniques. It should be solid. Papers that suggest a mechanism work well for diverse groups. You should also remember to pick an article ultimately that photocopies or Xerox as well. Always prepare for it. Read background papers. Make written notes for yourself so that you're not umming and eyeing during your journal club. Give yourself enough time, at least 1 week to prepare. Start why you picked it. Summarize the rationale. What was the state of research before this work was started? Why was this work necessary? Describe the methods briefly. Bring in your own expertise if you can. Were these the best methods to attack the particular problem? Were they sensitive enough? Precise enough? Was a power analysis done? When you take the results, Describe each figure in turn. Make sure that you actually know the figure. Write down a summary of what shows what. Condense complicated figures into 1 or 2 points. Discuss what is particularly novel about each result. What could have been done better or confirmed another way? Were enough replicates done? The idea is that you provide critical input. When you conclude, you need to describe the take-home points. Point out flaws or especially novel ideas. And what new directions does the work point to, if that is applicable? Critical appraisal of the evidence is something which will take a completely another 1 hour session, but I will try to highlight the important points you need to consider. When you appraise the study, you need to take into consideration, did the study address a clearly focused issue? Was the exposure accurately measured to minimize bias? Did you believe the results? Did the authors use an appropriate method to answer their question? What confounding factors have the authors accounted for? Have the authors taken account of the potential confounding factors in design, analysis, or both? Can the results be applied to the local population? Were the case participants recruited in an acceptable way? What are the results of these studies? Do these results fit with other available evidence? Were the control participants selected in an acceptable way? How precise are the results? How precise is the estimate of risk? When we talk in terms of periodontal therapy, the minimum requirements of clinical significant outcomes include those associated with potential changes in the clinical outcomes or improvements after therapy. For example, gains in clinical attachment level, reduction in pocket depth, BOP, and mobility, as well as patient-reported outcomes. For example, comfort, better aesthetics, and the ability to chew. When you critically appraise the results of an article about therapy, there are certain things as editor which I commonly encountered. The p-value, the confidence interval. Let me talk about these two. A p-value less than 0.05 means merely that the finding might have occurred by chance 5% of the time. That means less than 1 in 20 chance of being wrong. It has no direct bearing on whether or not the finding is clinically important. Although the use of p-values provides a direct, fast, and simple way to express statistical differences, it does not provide the magnitude of difference. Most authors refer to statistically significant values as p less than 0.05 and statistically highly significant as p less than 0.001, which is less than 1 in 1,000 chance of being wrong. The estimate most commonly used to assess the precision of results is the confidence interval. A confidence interval is a plausible range of values within which the true value is actually likely to lie. A 95% CI range means that if the study was performed 100 times, the result would be within this range 95 times. The narrower the confidence interval, the more confident the researchers are of the estimate of effect. Now, there are certain, when someone makes a recommendation for an article, there are certain definitions for the strength of recommendation. A strong recommendation means the evidence strongly supports providing this intervention. In favor means the evidence favors providing this intervention. A weak recommendation means the evidence suggests implementing this intervention after alternatives have been considered. Expert opinion for means the evidence is lacking, the level of certainty is low, and expert opinion guides this recommendation. Expert opinion against means the evidence is lacking, the level of certainty is low, and expert opinion suggests not implementing this intervention. And if the recommendation is against, it means the evidence suggests not implementing this intervention or discounting ineffective procedures. Ultimately, when you present the journal club, you remember, bring questions, a sense of humor, and good food. You need to keep a log of questions asked and answered and finish with the group's bottom line. A successful journal club is one which is question driven and appraisal focused and seeks to generate a written record, often referred to as CAT, that means a critically appraised topic, or a BET, that is a best evidence topic. Remember, discourse need not be discourteous. That means we need not be shouting in our journal clubs. The value we receive will be the value we give ultimately. I started with two words, science and communication. I'm going to end with words which include opportunity and future. Opportunity is a chance for advancement or progress. You as postgraduate students have already proven that you have the dedication it takes for success. You haven't taken the easy educational road. You've chosen to be a specialist in this field. Now is the chance to distinguish yourself even further. You can let your department, your institution, or your society be the catalyst that propels you forward to an enriching career. Don't wait to be asked. Seize the opportunity. Be a front runner. Slow and steady doesn't necessarily win the race in our profession. You have a lot to offer. So you should get involved and help create a stronger society. Future is defined as the time that is to come. A body at rest, it tends to stay at rest. A body in motion tends to stay in motion. Newton was not thinking about periodontics when he formulated the first law of motion. But it still applies to the evolution of our speciality. We have not improved or advanced by remaining static. We are a very strong group of professionals, and by joining us, you have made us one stronger. You now have a collective voice. Your institution, your department, and your society is here to protect your future, and you are our future. With this, I would like to thank you, and I wish you all the best for your future 3 years in the specialty of periodontology. Before I end, I always like to emphasize ZT for BG is something which is what I end with in all my presentations. If there is anything you need to remember as periodontists, is that you should have a zero tolerance for bleeding gums. Thank you for your kind and patient listening.
Thank you, sir. It was indeed an elaborate and a very crisp presentation. Various tips you have given for the young postgraduates. There are no questions in the chat box as such. Probably everyone have taken your message.
Or maybe it is lunchtime for everybody too.
Yeah, sir. Balaji, sir?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. It was a pleasure to have Ashish over here with us to enlighten the students regarding the presentation of Journal Club. Thank you, Dr. Ashish.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you. Ashish, sir.
Yeah.
Just close the share screen.
So, as a token of appreciation from our side, I would like to present you with a certificate. Please accept our gratitude.
Thank you for this opportunity, Dr. Balaji, Dr. Praveen Kudwa, and Dr. Mayur Kaushik. I was totally looking forward to it, and I hope I've done justice to the topic allotted.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Praveen is here. Dr. Mayur?
Yes, sir. Sir, I am here, sir.
Yeah. Dr. Praveen? Okay. We are moving ahead with the scientific program. We have with us Dr. Mayur, who is going to speak to us today about communication skills. Dr. Mayur Kaushik is a very young and energetic professor at Subharti Dental College and Hospital, and he has been doing a lot of good work, a lot of surgical clinical aspect, and he's mastered genetics as well. I take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Mayur to present his views on the communication skills which are required for patient motivation and patient dealing with the patient. Mayur.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot for those words, sir. I'll just try to start with my screen sharing. So I think it is visible, is it?
Yes.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay.
You can proceed.
Okay, thank you. So welcome, dear delegates. Heartiest welcome to all the students. I know it is coffee time after 2 lectures as such, but since this is a digital conference, I can offer you only digital coffee, and I hope that thing lasts till the time of the lunch break as such. So I'll try to be short in my presentation, 20-25 minutes. We'll just try to cover a few of the common sense points which all of us are supposed to keep in mind as a presenter, as a patient communicator during our MDS time. So Jai Hind and a very good morning, good afternoon rather now to all of you. I bring to you greetings from Subharti Dental College and Hospital, Meerut. Our college is not a standalone college. It is part of a huge university by the name of Swami Vivekanand Subharti University, which has as many as 20 different colleges under its wing. I've been working for Subharti for the last 16 years now, almost. This is my 16th year in Subharti. Ever since I completed my post-graduation from Government Dental College and Hospital, Nagpur. And whatever I am today, it is because of the blessings of my guide, Dr. R.K. Eltivar sir. I had a godly figure as my guide, and whatever I am today, I owe to Eltivar sir. I'm currently the head of the Department of Odontology and Implantology in Subharti, and this is our team Perio Subharti. I have a clinic by the name of Kaushik's Dental Care, where I practice with my father, Dr. K. Kaushik, who is a general dentist. And I am a mentor at Rochelle Implant Training Center. This is basically an implant training center that we have at Lokpriya Super Speciality Hospital, where we train general dentists how to place implants. Dr. Rohit is the director of Lokpriya Super Speciality Hospital. Rochelle is actually short for Dr. Rohit and his wife, Dr. Shalya. Dr. Shalya is the CEO of Swami Vivekanand Subharti University. We are a team of 4, along with me and Rohit. Dr. Sumit Makkad is there. He's a professor in prosthodontics. And we have Dr. Prajesh Dubey, who is a professor in oral surgery. This is my small world. She's my wife, Nupur. She's a professor in pedodontics, and she's my 9-year-old daughter, Adya. So coming back, heartiest congratulations once and foremost again to all the first-year MDS students on clearing of your NEET examination. So all of you must be thrilled. At the same time, slight tension might also be there. How will you go about doing this MDS as such? But now you're ready to do for this transition of journey from BDS to MDS. So this is one thing which we have been covering for the last almost 1.5 decades in the orientation programs for freshly joined MDS students. We say BDS is different from MDS mainly with regard to 3 aspects. These are the 3 aspects which you have to develop during your 3 years of MDS. The first aspect is with regard to difference in theory. You used to read theory during BDS also, but during MDS, what you will be doing is you will be learning something which is evidence-based theory. That is, whatever you will be learning, You will be learning with regard to various authors as such. You'll have to memorize who has given this thing, how did this person end up giving this particular conclusion as such. So this evidence-based approach, how to search for evidence, etc. This was covered in detail yesterday by Rajiv Chitkupi sir. So this would be the first aspect. The second aspect would be your clinical approach. So now you'll be learning those procedures which you haven't learned during your BDS time. So you'll be learning advanced clinical work. This is the second thing which you'll be learning. And the way you will be learning, the environment you will be learning in would be different from your BDS environment. For example, in a UG clinic, typically, we used to have a common dental clinic in which all the BDS students were allotted patients. Patient communication was limited to some extent. And then ultimately, maybe next time the same patient we were getting or that patient was transferred to somebody else according to availability. That thing is not there in the PG clinic. We have our own cubicles. It is more of a personalized contact, communication with the patient on a one-to-one basis. And what happens is ultimately the same patient would be allotted to you again. So the work environment is different, and even the teacher communication is different. In UG teaching, we have an all-on-one approach. A single demonstration is given to multiple students at the same time. In the PG time, it would be more of one-to-one communication. One-to-one communication basically means that a teacher would be telling you things on a one-to-one basis, and ultimately your communication in front of the teacher also to the patient will vary. So this is the second thing which you will be learning. And the final thing which you will be learning in your MDS time would be public speaking. So this is one thing which many a times not all of us are comfortable with. But unfortunately, as part of the MDS curriculum, we have 15 seminars, 15 journal clubs, and not just that, you have to deliver UG lectures also, you have to deliver papers and posters in the various conferences also. So this is one thing which is part and parcel of MDS curriculum. You need to learn about this communication skill, presentation skill. And the first thing which you need to remember with regard to communication is that there are actually two aspects of communication. What you do with a patient on a one-to-one basis is known as conversation, and what you address a gathering, when you're addressing a gathering, is known as oration. So lot of differences are there between conversation and oration. So this is one thing which we'll be covering in our discussion short, but these are few common sense points which unless and until are clear in our minds, neither we'll be excelling in patient communication, that is conversation, and neither we'll be excelling in our presentations, that is JC seminar, that is our oration as such. So our ultimate aim has to be that this is where we are starting as a BDS. No exposure at all to either individualized long patient communication and no exposure at all later on to public speaking. But our aim should be that ultimately we reach here from a activity where we weren't sure about ourselves to a point where we become so confident that now we can convince any patient for any procedure. We would be able to address a gathering of thousands. This is what is part of your MDS training. This is what you have to imbibe, but you will be imbibing this thing only if you have few key points in mind, few textbooks which we were told to refer the moment we joined MDS, few psychological aspects which we were supposed to keep in mind. So I'll just brush up few of the concepts which we were told that time that we are supposed to keep in mind as a patient communicator as well as an orator. So with this thing in mind, we'll be starting with our discussion of power of communication skills. Always remember, you are what you speak. Unfortunately, you have taken up a branch, or rather you have gotten into an industry which is actually dependent on speaking skills. Had you gone into any other field, basically computer science, etc., you would have been dealing with machines. Right now, you'll have to deal with people throughout your life. So this is one thing which you cannot be uncomfortable with. So two aspects of the discussion today would be the first part, or rather the major part, two-third part would be on patient conversation. What all things we are supposed to keep in mind. And the last one, third part, I'll be giving you few tips and tricks, the ones which were given to us by our teachers, our seniors, things which we learned over a period of time with regard to the oration aspect. So with regard to these two things, the first thing you are supposed to remember is it is absolutely necessary. There's no way around it, around which you can expect that I can get away by not learning about communication skills. You define your place in society by how you talk. There is no absolutely no way you can get away with it. Okay. But the problem is, due to digital technology, this skill is actually declining over the years. So over the years, what has happened is, we had actually, there was an era in which people used to talk face to face to each other. Then came an era, an age in which phone calls got started. Instead of meeting people, we started making a phone call. And now is the age of texting. Simply we text somebody whenever we wish to talk. So the entire result of all this is our communication skills have actually declined. So don't expect any miracle to occur that the moment we'll be talking to a patient or addressing a gathering, all of a sudden those skills will come into us. No, this is something which has to be, we have to remain in habit with. This is not something which we will come all of a sudden. At the same time, we need to keep few points in mind. So, I mean, there is absolutely no alternative to face impact. I don't know how many of you might have seen this video. Steve Jobs, when he unveiled the first MacBook Air, the awe, the aura which he built up on the stage when he was introducing this apparatus, that is something which was mesmerizing. Go and have a look on YouTube. Many of you might be too small that time, so you might not have seen. But one thing which you have to understand and accept is that any person who can speak on their feet, be crisp, and engage in effective communication has a clear cut advantage over a person who cannot. You will be having co-PGs. Okay, any person who is speaking better than you will be having a clear cut better impression on his or her teachers as compared to you, unless and until you take this as a challenge that I also will be imbibing the same thing. So please remember that whenever we are speaking, we are not just promoting our ideas, we are actually promoting ourselves also. Your best promotion is how you are speaking as such. So please remember this thing. Problem is, majority of the times, even though we know that we have to speak, we take it as an obstacle rather than an opportunity. We take it as a problem rather than a solution. We try to get away with it. Our seminar is there, we'll try to procrastinate, postpone it as much as possible. We get an opportunity to present a paper. We have been given a choice by a teacher in a conference. You can either present a paper or a poster. Straight away we say, sir, we are comfortable, or ma'am, we are comfortable with the poster. No, you have to look beyond the boulder. You have to look beyond the difficulty. That is where greatness lies. So ultimately, once we have said that communication is essential, the second important thing is, what are the basics of patient communication? What all things are you supposed to keep in mind first before even entering your clinic? So these are few things which have been given by psychologists, especially for medical professionals. So before starting with the basics, all of you should be aware of the definition of communication. What are we meaning by communication? So this was a definition which was given way back by Stoner et al. In the year 1995, but it holds true today, that by communication, people, be it two people or a group of people, are basically sharing four things. They're sharing their knowledge, feelings, ideas, and experiences. This is what we mean by communication. It's not just what we are speaking, our knowledge, but what I'm feeling. This is what I feel it should be done. That is it. But the point is, our communication, when does it start? It starts even before we open our mouth. It starts the moment a patient is entering our clinic. How are we looking at our patient? So naturally, let us be very frank, the way we look at our patient is, we are searching for these things. We are either searching for a recession as a would-be periodontist, for recession coverage, mucogenital surgery. We are either looking for a deep pocket, I'll go in for regenerative flap, bone grafting, GTR, or best still, I'm looking for an empty space where I can place an implant. This is known as disease-centric approach. That is why majority of the times we end up saying patients are there. We are not able to convince them for the procedure. Why? You didn't have a look at the person first. We had a look at the disease and then we started modifying the conversation accordingly. Patients are not stupid. They're able to sense that thing, that this doctor's interest in me arose only when he or she found something which was interesting to him or her, not which was beneficial to me. So the important thing is you need to see the patient as a whole first. This is what is called as patient centric approach. This is known as patient centric approach. You need to concentrate on the patient and then have a look at the disease. So this is the first thing which you are supposed to keep in mind. And after that, according to psychologists, the important thing to remember is there are four things which, as a doctor, as a medical, as a dental professional, you are supposed to keep in mind, which your communication has to establish. And these four things are, we say it is a process, it is multifunctional, it is multi-channeled, and it is not always intentional. Looks confusing on the slide, but it is not. Okay. Just one point about each of these things I'll be telling. The first thing is about it is a process. What does this mean? This basically means that what works for one patient won't be working for another patient. You cannot rely on a script. I was able to convince the patient earlier telling this. I'll be able to convince again. No, this is not how it works. Communication is all about sharing when two people are involved in developing a trust. So each and every individual is important. Each and every individual is unique. You need to adapt accordingly. What worked for one won't be working for the next. You need to understand that person. And for understanding that person, it is not just how effectively you are speaking, it is how effectively you are listening. So this is an aspect which I'll be covering later in the presentation, how to listen properly as a doctor. So first thing is it is a process. Second is it is multifunctional. As a doctor, which are the four functions you are trying to achieve in a patient? So these are the four functions which you are supposed to achieve. The first is psychologic. Patient needs to accept you as an authority, as a doctor. That is the first important thing. Your impact has to be proper. How we'll create that impact, that we'll be studying. The second thing is social. Fine, the patient has accepted you as a doctor, but is the patient trusting you? Is the patient thinking that you are here for his or her benefit or your own benefit? That is the second aspect. Once these two things are established, that is when the patient will actually start listening to the information which you are giving. The information that this is good for you, this is bad for you, this is a wrong method of toothbrushing, kindly don't follow this thing. This is the fun thing. But ultimately, the net result is that you are not here to give information. You are here to influence. You want to change the patient's behavior. You should be able to influence the person that instead of this method of brushing, you are supposed to use this correct method of brushing. So that is the fourth intention of your communication. So these four things, these four functions you need to keep in mind. This is what I am here to achieve. And that is when the third thing, multi-channel. Multi-channel means it is not just the verbal part, the non-verbal part. Patient is observing you. So verbal means what we are speaking, what we are writing. And non-verbal basically means your overall appearance, your gestures, your facial expressions. Patient is telling you, doc, it is paining a lot. And the expression which you are making is of disinterest. You're looking at your watch again and again. You're looking as if you are impatient. You're looking as if you have ample and more patients waiting. No, the patient's trust is gone. So verbal as well as non-verbal cues you need to give to the patient with regard to this thing. And finally, the last point is the communication is not always intentional. Many a times, this is actually the hardest lesson to learn as a would-be doctor. Many a times what happens is whatever you are trying to do, some wrong message is inadvertently conveyed as such. So this is one thing which you have to keep in mind. Never ever talk in front of the patient. This is where the patients don't take this thing properly. So ultimately what happens is that whatever you do, never ever discuss your routine problems in front of the patient. One basic rule which you have to remember is always remember patient dislike being neglected or ignored. Nobody likes that I am here and this person is discussing about his routine in front of me. This is one thing. Please make sure that you avoid this at all possible costs. A very good example was covered up by Balaji sir yesterday. A classic example when patients can actually sue you. Patient can tell you that this is a case of malpractice when you make fun or say something wrong about the patient. So that is an extreme thing, but otherwise make it a point. Make it a point that never ever discuss things in front of the patient as such. So once you have these things in mind, these are the things which you have to keep in mind when addressing a patient, which is the single most important thing that you are supposed to keep in mind. The first thing is, of course, that always do not try to extract the history. You have to persuade, convince the patient, not pressurize. Tell me this thing fast. I am here for only this thing. No. Hear the patient. Patient is giving you respect as a doctor. The first rule of communication is always and always make sure you are patient enough to listen. And the one feeling which you have to develop in your lifetime, if you want to be deserving enough that a doctor should be placed in front of your name, is the feeling of empathy. Without empathy, there is no patient communication. Please, the entire thing, it is communication is not about tips and tricks. Communication is not about bombastic language. Communication is not about how fluently you can speak. It is what you feel from inside, and that whether you are able to portray outside or not. So empathy is very, very important. That is the capacity to share a patient's emotional state. This is very, very important. Okay, so this is the progress. Empathy should have progressed, but this is the actual progress which is there. Studies have shown that especially with regard to dental students, empathy is something which declines over the years. A third year student, a third year BDS student I'm talking about, when he or she joins the clinic, that is when it has been showing that the empathy level is at its peak. As and when the patient's number increases, our empathy level actually decreases. We become more mechanical. We become more impatient. So this is one thing which we need to take care of. Please take care of your empathy levels. Each and every patient is special. Our bread and butter, be it learning or earning, is because of patients. Okay, so please take care of this empathy level. And this empathy level goes through various stages. 4 stages are there. The first is pity. I know you are suffering. I acknowledge it. Okay. The second stage comes sympathy. I care about your suffering. Fine. Third is empathy. I can feel your suffering. And then finally, you become compassionate. As a doctor, I want to relieve your suffering. Are you getting it? So this is one thing. See, doctor profession which you have taken is a very emotional profession. Unless and until you are a little bit emotional at heart, you will never be successful. Forget about as a general dental surgeon rather than as a periodontist. Okay, so this is one thing which you have to keep in mind. But at the same time, we say excess of anything is bad, meaning empathy has to be to a certain level only. It shouldn't be so much, my goodness, I know how painful it will be. I won't be administering LA only to you. I can't bear to see that pain. No, it shouldn't be that excessive also, the empathy, that it is clouding your clinical judgment and your clinical skill. If you become so emotional, you won't be, let's say, putting a single incision throughout your MDS life as such. So please take care of this thing. Everything to a level is good. Anything excessive is bad. So little bit of empathy has to be there. So this is one thing which you have to be there. So once you have kept these things in mind, now you are ready to talk to your patients. Now you know that these are the basic 4 points And of course, empathy as the fifth, which I am supposed to keep in my mind and heart as a doctor, as a medical professional first, and now I am ready to address the patients. Now, with these things, with this mindset and this heart set, this is how I'll be talking to my patients. So, this is where six core elements come into the picture. So, these six core elements I'll be coming to later, but still remember one thing, even before you start talking to the patient, the moment you have entered the clinic, the patient looks at you and the patient forms an impression of you, and this impression invariably is lasts for a long time. It might not be the last impression. This impression lasts for a long time. Based on this impression, whatever you will be speaking, the patient will be giving either respect and importance or completely ignoring it. So this first impression, the moment you are entering or the patient is entering and having a look at you, matters a lot. And this first impression is dependent a lot on how you dress. Okay, in our profession, with regard to patient communication, there is absolutely no scope of casual dressing. We say casual dressing gets a casual response. We need to be formally dressed as a doctor. We need to be formally dressed. Please remember that patient doctor relationship is all about mutual trust, confidence, and respect. And studies have shown that all these factors are actually determined first and foremost by the physician's attire. The entire basis of doctor patient relationship starts the moment we have a look at the doctor. And if the doctor is shabbily dressed, no matter how effectively the doctor might be speaking, you might be speaking in your MDS time, you won't end up earning the patient's respect and the patient's trust. See, in MDS, you are dependent on patient cooperation. No matter how much during this COVID time, we might be thinking that we'll go in for a non-clinical dissertation, etc. Ultimately, we are here to learn extra work, additional work, advanced clinical work on patients. So we need to convince the patient for recall, we need to convince the patient for procedures, etc. So this is one thing which you have to keep in mind. You need to dress up properly, and not just dress up, how you look. Meaning, the Kabir Singh look was very popular last year after the hit movie Kabir Singh, but the same look exactly doesn't go with an apron. With an apron, you cannot think of this huge beard. Now, this is one thing which this lockdown actually has had a major effect on many of the undergraduate students, especially. We are taking online classes. Half of the time, I'm not able to recognize those students only. They will be having this large beards as such. The dressing part has completely gone. So this is one thing which I feel after the lockdown is completely over, we'll have to make an effort to come back. But as MDS students, please remember these are things which you cannot hope to exercise at all. You need to be groomed up properly. And once you are groomed up properly, that is when you are actually ready to interact with your patients. So how is it you'll be interacting with your patient? This again has been given by Pereira et al. In 2015. 6 points he has told, very basic points, nothing to memorize, nothing to this thing, but at least we need to keep in mind. Unless and until we are keeping in mind, we won't be able to exercise this thing. So please remember, first is how are we supposed to initiate the session? The second point is gathering information. The third point is explanation and planning. And once you have done these things, you end up developing 2 points. The first is building a doctor-patient relationship, and finally structuring the consultation, and then finally you are ready to close the session. So this is how medical communication or patient communication goes in a structured manner. So just 1 or 2 points with regard to each of these things. Initiating the session, patient has come to you for the first time. What all things with regard to patient communication we are supposed to keep in mind? So there are 4 things with regard to patient communication that you are supposed to keep in mind. The first thing is you have to make the patient comfortable. Okay, meaning it is a good practice. I generally follow it in my clinic always. Couple of times in a month, I sit on the dental chair just to make sure that the dental chair is comfortable enough to sit on. The patient has to be comfortable. The second thing is you need to reassure the patient that either pain won't be there, or if it will be there, You are the one who will be telling the patient when it will be there, how to manage it, etc. Based on this thing, the patient should feel secure. This doctor won't be causing me any harm. This doctor will be doing something which is beneficial for me, something which will be required for me only. And finally, an assurance which you need to give in the initiation part itself is of privacy. With regard to privacy, you'll have to tell the patient that no matter if I have to discuss your case with somebody, some of my colleagues, my seniors, my teachers, I won't be disclosing your identity. So these are the things which go a long way in building patient trust. So this is one thing which you will be doing. After that, you start with the habit of asking questions. Now, this is where the tricky part starts in patient communication. Studies say that at least 1 minute we should be listening to the patient patiently once the patient starts answering our question, whatever question, what is the problem you are coming with, or anything of that sort. But actually, what happens is 18 seconds is the time period in which we actually start responding straight away. So instead of listening, we straight away start interrupting in between. So that is where this listening part is very, very important. So the listening part, which is important, which we have to develop, is we have to remember we have to listen, not hear. Listening is actually a very time consuming process. Listening is a process which has to be developed over a period of time. Rather, according to textbooks, a very special name has been given with regard to listening for medical profession, and that name is active emphatic listening. So please remember this thing, active emphatic listening. It has 3 stages, which all of us as doctors are supposed to follow. But the problem with happens is we come to an MDS mindset with a particular mission. We have to clear examination, we have to write this thing, we have to write that thing. Our mission shouldn't just be to clear MDS. Our mission should be that later on, once I clear MDS, I should be able to be a successful doctor. And that successful doctor is all about doctor patient relationship. So, with regard to active emphatic listening, you need to remember that the 3 stages are sensing, processing, and responding. We used to remember it as SPR. Sensing, please be patient. Please be patient in what the patient is saying. Please listen to it properly. You have to absorb all the information, not information, I'm sorry, information which is being said. You have to absorb it completely, not just what the patient is saying. You have to remember how the patient is saying it. Are you getting it? So this is one thing which you have to remember. If the patient is telling about pain, you have a look at the facial expressions of the patient, you have a look at the eyes of the patient. That itself will be telling you with what intensity the patient is having pain. So this is one thing which you have to be observant about. Once you have sensed, the second part is processing. Now you have to absorb all the facts and make it into a narrative, that this is what the patient might be suffering from. You have what is the idea about the diagnosis. And then finally, the responding stage. Responding stage basically means that the patient might have told you many things, but there would be many things which the patient might not be able to clarify. So that is where you have to ask few questions to clarify that I didn't understand this thing. Kindly clarify this thing, like that. So this is about the responding stage. So please remember, listening goes hand in hand with facilitation. Unless and until you are facilitating what the patient is speaking, none of the patient would be speaking, at least openly, with you. So, not just you don't have to give any negative cues to the patient, impatience, facial expression, looking at the watch, etc. Rather, you have to give something positive to the patient. The positive cues which are being given in textbook is reassuring posture. You have to be comfortable in the patient's company. At the same time, you have to face the patient and give your undivided attention. You need to show that you have all the time in the world to hear what the patient is speaking. Non-verbal cues. This is very, very important. Nodding your head. You are understanding, you are absorbing. And then finally, verbal cues like please go on. So these are basic common sense things which ideally should have become stronger, more clearer from our third year of BDS on to final year BDS, and even so more in MDS. But is it actually happening? In India, we have ample population, we have ample patients to work upon, but these common sense points are actually declining. Unless and until these points are there, the active emphatic listening won't be there. See, Perio as a branch is dependent on patient motivation, because two of the major factors which draw a patient to dental treatment for dental treatment, aesthetics and pain, majority of the times are not there in Perio, right? At the same time, what happens is tangible results. You have resolved a 7 millimeter pocket to just 2 millimeter, 3 millimeter. Tangible results means clearly appreciable results by the patient. That thing is also not there. So ultimately, in no other clinical specialty are communication skills so important as periodontists. If today we can say that patients come to us, no matter which department they are going to get treatment with, to at least ask whether this treatment is correct or not, whether this thing is the right thing to do or not, that is because of our communication skills. So please remember this thing. And ultimately, I emphasize again and again this non-verbal communication, this non-verbal communication. Your body language is very, very important. You need to maintain an eye to eye contact with the patient, and then only you will be able to convince your patient. And finally, you should be summarizing the entire thing, that this is what I have been able to tell about you. And lastly is the closing of the session. So this is one thing which is ignored many a times. We tend to rush it up in a hurry. We realize that even though we don't realize that even though we have many patients, patient has reserved almost half a day for just this one appointment. So before closing the session, always give a hint to your patient, minimum 5 minutes back as such, that this thing is about to get over, instead of closing it in a rush, because that is where no matter how much hard you might have worked earlier, you end up spoiling your impression. So this is one thing which you have to keep in mind. Closing is important. So ultimately, please remember, doctor-patient relationship is in a spiral manner. You can spoil it at the very first impact, but you cannot say that you have built it up in the first sitting itself. It builds it up, it builds gradually. Each and every appointment, at each and every appointment, this trust should be rising. Your longevity, your success of your dental practice won't be dependent on how nicely you had read books, etc. I can tell you with confidence, because it has been more than 1.5 decades since I've been running a practice, and like mine is a fairly successful practice, but this practice is entirely dependent on my patient clientele. This practice of mine is entirely dependent on me having a good word with my patient. So please remember, patient communication skills are very, very important for how much you will be learning during your PG time. There would be a set of PG students with whom the patient would be coming back regularly. Even during this corona time, their patients would be turning up completely regularly and all. And there would be another set of PG students whose patients again and again would be giving some excuse that no, we cannot come, we have this problem or something. So what is the difference? Is there a difference between the mental caliber of these two students as you and your colleague? Is there a difference between the hard work? No. The only difference is with regard to communication skills. Once we were trying to convince the patient, somewhere the other person's part was missing. We didn't have these basic things in our mind. So please remember, so this was about the first part. Okay, in another hardly 10 minutes, I'll be finishing off the oration part. So I'm sure all of you understood the conversation part. Please try to remember a few points. As said, this is a very general topic. Okay, so majority of you who are very keen note takers and all would be saying that this is one thing which cannot be asked in the examination. So why unnecessarily spend time on this thing? Let us leave, have a good lunch and all. But trust me, these are things which actually you tend to learn the hard way later on. So it is always better to learn from the mistakes, from the hardships of your seniors, your teachers, rather than trying to learn it the hard way. And this is one thing without which there is no bread and butter in our industry. And when I'm talking about industry, I'm talking about dentistry in general, not just about pedontology. As an MDS student, communication is the key. If you are not able to develop your communication skills, be it with patient or be it orational skills during your PG time, trust me, you won't be developing it for a lifetime. These are things which develop during PG time and they tend to get stronger later on. But in case we don't do it at all during PG time, there's no way a miracle would be happening once you finish your post graduation. So moving on from conversation to oration. So just 10 minutes more, please hold on, okay? So with regard to oration, why is oration required? This is one thing which I expect the postgraduates to answer, okay? Ultimately, it is not just about 15 journal clubs, 15 seminars, UG lectures, conference papers, posters, etc. No, it is not just about oration during your MDS time. The moment you have taken admission in MDS, you are committed to lifelong being a public speaker and orator. You will have to speak in IDA meetings throughout your life. You will have to present papers in your specialty as well as other specialty conferences, and you'll have to arrange camps, address mass gatherings if you want to be successful in your dental practice. So this is one thing, dear students, please understand. Okay, there are not many jobs in colleges, and otherwise also if you are in a college without speaking, without orational skills, you are nothing. So with regard to oration, we require something known as PPE. So what is this PPE? All of us are aware, Corona time, PPE stands for personal protection equipment. So that is the PPE which you require to operate on patients nowadays. But the PPE which you actually require for speaking, becoming a good speaker, is actually short for plan, prepare, and execute. So this is the last part of my presentation. So just 2-3 points I'll be giving with regard to PPE. This is the PPE which you have to keep in mind the moment a new seminar is given to you, the moment a new journal club is given to you, or the moment a general lecture you are supposed to take for undergraduate or maybe your colleagues, postgraduate students. So what does the plan part mean? Plan part basically means that the basic mistake that we do whenever a topic is given to us is we start searching who has made a presentation on this, which was the earlier seminar which was done on this. We start searching for the PowerPoint presentation. No, the important part is 3 A's are there. The first is assemble. Read as much as possible on the topic. Bring the relevant data together. This is the first step. Assemble. The second is align. Make sure whatever you are reading that is actually related to your topic only. This is the second point. And the final point is apply. Ultimately, make a mental skeleton in your mind that these are the things which I'll be covering in my talk. This plan part is the part which is actually lacking in many of us, majority of the students today. Straight away, because of the digital age, they straight away search, okay, fine, this is a PPT. Now, based on this PPT, we'll be reading. No, the reading material, the planning part has to come up first. Okay, this is something which is given in all the textbooks. Then comes the prepared part. So preparation is the key. How you prepare is the key, but the problem is this is also the most neglected part. The reason for that is this is a very time consuming process. So majority of the time we say we are too busy. I cannot give time to prepare, or we don't know how to do it. Majority of us teachers, with regard to any problems in the technological software sector, we start asking our students as such. So this is something in which you need to give time, the preparation part. So what is preparation part? Once the study is over, the basic rule of preparation is we need to be familiar. We need to be comfortable with the tool which we'll be using to present ultimately our this thing. So just like a craftsman has to be comfortable with his various tools, he need to be aware of which tool is used for which. Similarly, we need to be aware of the tools which are available to us for presentation as an MDS student and later on in life. So can we present on a blackboard with a chalk or maybe whiteboard with a pen? We cannot. The reason for that is this is not a sales presentation which we have to make, in which we just have to explain few figures, graphs, etc. we need to show cases, we need to show pictures, and those photograph possibility is there only if we are using some slide app. So these are the 5 slide apps which you have to be aware. This is the technological part which you need to be aware as an MDS student. Are you getting a point? There is absolutely no way around it. Okay. The reason why you need to be aware is because actually no one trains us how to effectively communicate when using slides. Straight away, we'll be telling you, read it from this, read it from that. But ultimately, the basics of a slide presentation is something which we are not aware. No, this is something which we have to invest time in. So the first important app is Canva. So these are not apps which I routinely use, but I have used all the apps. So I can just tell you 1 or 2 points which you should be aware. So Canva is a browser-based app. This is a paid app. This is an app which is very good actually for designing of pamphlets, etc. For designing of some design for a website, etc. Not a very good slide presentation app. So I wouldn't recommend Canva, even though I have used it a couple of times. The next app, Prezi. Prezi is something which you must have heard your colleagues. Many a times your colleague would be saying, you are still preparing a presentation in PowerPoint? No, I use Prezi. Prezi is very good. It has these magnification effects. So Prezi basically has, majority of you might be aware, a big chart sort of a thing. On a single slide, lot of points are there. You can give non-linear presentation. One part can be magnified, it can be reduced, and another part can be magnified. The problem with Prezi are two. It is time consuming. It takes a lot of time on Prezi to make a simple presentation. Second is it is paid. Majority of the features on this browser based app are almost $19 a month. That is almost 1400 rupees a month are there. So these are not things which we can pay easily. So I wouldn't recommend Prezi. The next app which is there is Google Slides. Now this is a free app. So Google Slide, all of a sudden Google products have come into the limelight because of this lockdown. We are conducting examinations on Google Docs, etc. Google Slides is fine enough. Okay, but the problem with Google Slides is it is not as advanced as the two major softwares, slide presentation softwares available in the market, that is Keynote and PowerPoint. So the animations and all look kiddish or at least basic in the case of Google Slides. The second last app is Keynote. So Keynote, I'm sure majority of you must be aware. I've been a Mac user for the last more than 8 years now. So Keynote is one presentation app which comes free on Mac. But that is the problem also. It can be used only on a Mac. So even on a Mac, I never use Keynote. The problem with my making a presentation on Keynote is won't be working on a Windows PC. Second problem with Keynote is no major updates have been there since 2009, if I remember right. So what happens is a similar file, for example, this presentation also, if I try to open on my Macintosh also, it will take double the amount of time to open on Keynote as compared to PowerPoint. So PowerPoint is one app which I would definitely recommend. The reason I took this 2-3 minutes in explaining about these apps is because nobody should be able to make you feel inferior that I am using this and you are using the routine. The routine is still the best, but you'll have to give time to explore all the options which are there in PowerPoint. The Office subscription is pretty economical. 6 people can share it. So it comes down to roughly 900 rupees a year. So this is one thing which all of you should be using. Okay. So once you have done this thing, plan part is over, preparation part is over, your PowerPoint is made. Now you are ready to execute. So for execution, in his famous book, Articulate Executive, Granville has said you need to execute it with power. So power basically is an acronym. It basically stands for these points. The P in power stands for punch. So don't take it in the literal way. What it means is the presentation start has to be impressive. It has to be energetic. You cannot sound tired. You cannot sound disinterested in the very beginning of your presentation. So give a strong beginning, some photograph, some quotation, something of that sort. Make it lively, make it strong. That is the thing. O is for one theme. Whenever you are speaking on a topic, do not diversify. You have to take care that the same theme, same topic, be it your JC topic, seminar topic, is being covered only in that presentation. Do not make sure that there is no information overload is there. So this is one thing which you need to remember. You have to restrict yourself. You have to restrict yourself to the topic. which you decided that I'll be speaking only on this topic. For example, when Balaji sir told me that I have to speak on this communication skills, I made sure that nothing else, whichever the topics might be, which I speak on routinely, implants, genetics, etc., I don't even touch those topics here. I restrict myself only to communication. The W in power in your presentation stands for Windows. As is rightly said, don't tell me about it, show it to me. Gone are the days of PowerPoint presentation with bullet and lines, etc. Are you getting me? Those days are over. You need to be pictographic. You need to show photographs and you need to speak on those photographs. We say a photograph is worth 1,000 words. Okay. Not just that, you need to give examples, live examples in your presentation. Then only your presentation will be effective. E in power stands for ear. You need to know the ear of your audience. If you are presenting a seminar or a journal club, you need to be aware of the favorite topics of the teachers in your department. What will make them happy? What will make them unhappy? On what part the questions can be asked? Same is with regard to conference presentations. The moment you are presenting it in an idea conference, a different set of things have to be touched upon. The moment it is specialty conference, it has to be prepared in a different manner according to the audience you are addressing. The rule is simple: know your audience, love your audience. There is absolutely no way around it. You need to be aware of the interests of your audience. And the final R is for retention. Your ending also has to be impressive. You need to end with something which maybe not all the people in the audience, but handful of those would be able to appreciate that this is something which I liked. And ultimately, your objective is not just that people should be listening to you. Your objective should be that people should actually be trying to imbibe those things. Fine, he or she told me this thing, I'll try to incorporate it in my presentation. Or this doctor gave a presentation in which this method of toothbrushing was there, I will try to incorporate that thing. So that is retention. This is one thing which you have to end it. So please execute with power. So this is one thing. Your takeaway message has to be worth taking. Ultimately, whatever you are trying to say, it should be worth enough that the people actually follow that thing. So I'll be ending my this thing with the famous words of Aristotle. So Aristotle was a Greek philosopher. He said three things have to be there in a great speech. So the first thing which he used was ethos. Ethos is Greek for ethics. What is your credibility? Whether you have a good name or a bad name, depending on that, people will be either be listening to you or ignoring you entirely. So you need to build a good reputation first, ethos. The second thing is logos. Logos is Greek for logic. You cannot simply speak things. You have to present them in a structured manner and giving some evidences or examples saying that this is why it should be done. And finally, a last point is pathos. Pathos means emotions. You need to appeal to the emotionality part of your audience. Then only they'll be following or accepting or trying to do what you ask them to do. So please remember the thing which I started in the beginning. You are what you speak. There is absolutely no way around communication skills. So coming to the slide which brings a smile to everybody sitting in the audience. Okay, almost 52 minutes I have spoken. So this is a breathtaker smile as such. So had I been there, I would have expected all of you to be completely relieved. So with regard to conclusion, again and again, I'm saying one thing. No matter how many notes we might be taking, whether we like it or not, our lives, that is our career, our reputation, our social life, are determined to a significant degree by how we speak. We need to ask ourselves, are we forgettable? Or do people remember how we speak or what we say? Or are we boring or do we try to spark interest? Majority of us would like to fall in this second category. We would like to impress our teachers, our colleagues, and our patients. So with regard to this thing, you need to keep few points in your mind as such. Majority of the points which I have taken are from these two textbooks. Okay, so those of you are interested in with regard to uh, tips and tricks on conversation, How to Communicate with Patients. This is a beautiful book by Lance Young. And with regard to orational skills, how to give public gathering speeches, this is a beautiful book by Granville Toogood. So I have the marked soft copies of both these books with me. Those of you who are interested in this topic, this is a beautiful topic. Again, major question or short note won't be coming in your examination, but this is something which will be helping you throughout your life. Trust me on that thing. You can, those of you who want these books can either email or WhatsApp it to me. I thank all the audience, all the delegates for holding on in this time of afternoon, in this time without coffee, without lunch, etc. And no words are there to actually thank Balaji sir and Kudwa sir for considering me worthy of this honor of making me a part of this very innovative, very, what is it, different, very energetic conference, Perio Orient 2020. I thank a lot to all the organizers for making me a part of this event. And again, thanks a lot to all the delegates once again for being here. Thanks a lot, all of you. Balaji sir, over.
Yeah, thank you, Mayur. Thank you, Mayur, for an excellent presentation. The message has been, in fact, communicated very well. Your communication skills are par excellence, and it's very well communicated. And a lot of, compliments from various members. There is one question, I think, put forward by one of our colleagues, that how do we communicate with a patient who does not know our language, that is English or Hindi? How would you communicate? What do we do in such a case?
In such a case, sir, we need a translator, sir. Right. No matter how much we are trying to communicate by non-verbal cues as such, non-verbal cues can be a supplement, can be an adjunct to verbal cues. They cannot be a replacement. So sign language, etc., or trying to convey few things, that can be part of the gesture, meaning we can use our non-verbal communication. But unless and until we have a translator with us who is conveying the verbal part of our communication, there's no way we'll be able to convey it properly. So non-verbal plays a role, but we have to remember that non-verbal and verbal goes hand in hand. Right. Unless and until we are having somebody to convey that this is something which can be done, there's no way it can be done, sir. So this is one thing which I would like to say.
Yeah, very, very nice. And one more question is, can you tell the names of the books again? You quoted some books, I think, for...
yes, sir.
Can you name those again? I think there was a request by one of the...
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So that was a request before. So Greenville and Toogood and this thing. So I'll just put the names of the books again. And again, I would like to say that sir, communication skills for this thing, sir, both these books, both by Young and Toogood, actually, I have the soft copy and I have the marked soft copy, because like majority of the times when we are reading these books, we begin on a very positive note. And then after the first 10-15 pages, maybe we'll end up losing patience that this is not relevant to our specialty. So ultimately we have to search for that material. So that searching part I had done, and it is in a marked format only. So in case anybody wants a good book on conversation, patient communication, this book by Young is very good. And this is one thing which we have marked also. And this is for oration, Granville Toogood, this one. So both of these are marked books. So in case anybody wishes, sir, I would be more than happy to share over email or WhatsApp as such.
Yeah, there's one more question which has just popped out. In case of treatment failure, sometimes patients lose trust on us. Definitely. So what to do to build trust again? Very interesting question.
Very interesting question, sir. Sir, luckily, once we refer medical textbooks, breaking the bad news in our specialty is not that difficult, meaning telling a patient that tooth is no more or something is not that bad. But what I feel is that from the very beginning itself, some sort of mental preparation to the patient should be told from our side. As I said, with regard to Perio, the main problem is the results are not exactly tangible. The results are not exactly that the patient would be able to appreciate straight away, just like in prostho, a crown has been given, or an endo, the pain has been relieved. So some sort of this thing we need to prepare from the very beginning. Failure has to be defined by the ultimate percentage of failure. If it is a complete failure where the tooth has to be extracted ultimately, that also to a certain extent should have been conveyed from the very beginning, that this may be there and this might not be there. So this thing should be there. Sir, I feel that communication is a continuous process, and so is trust. So ultimately, in case the patient was very satisfied by our way of talking, first and foremost, our treatment begins the manner in which we administer LA. Patient was satisfied that doc, you administered LA in a painless manner, and post treatment also we had addressed the concern. In that case, that trust which has built up over a period of time, I feel it won't be going down drastically all of a sudden in case the treatment is not completely successful. So we need to realize that before reaching that stage of failure, if we have worked on the communication part and all these steps, this thing is an eventuality which ultimately we had prepared the patient also, and it won't be causing that much of an harm. Many a times the reactions which we see from patients many a times is either because of over promise. So we always say over promise and under deliver. It should not be the other way around, that your truth will be completely fine or something of that sort. So like we should be having putting a pinch of doubt in the patient's mind always, and at the same time the communication is skill should be such that even if it fails, the patient should be going saying that this doc actually did his level best, and somehow because of some other factor this thing failed. Because like sir, that is the example which we give of all the successful practitioners, that even after the patient treatment failed, the patient is telling that somewhere the mistake must have been from my side only. That doc was impeccable, he did the work very nicely. So again, that is an extreme thing which only successful practitioners get. But what I mean to say is, put a pinch of doubt from the very beginning, build trust and relationship over the various settings which are of treatment which have been given. Then finally, failure is bad, but that reaction of rejection from the patient will not be there in case that trust has been built up to such an extent, sir.
Yeah, one more last question. How to communicate a hearing impaired patient? Can we use sign language?
Sir, sign language, even though in movies, etc., Braille also reading as well as this thing might appear simple. It is not that simple, sir. I have gone through few of the classes also myself. So it is very easy to say, can we use sign language? It takes years to master. So I feel many a times it is not completely practical for us to think that we'll be able to master the sign language. And again, with regard to sign language, the thing which I had learned that time was it is not universal. Just like words might work with one person, might not work with another person, patients also take time to master sign language. Not everybody in India is aware of sign language also. They haven't gone through the training as such. So I wouldn't advise that it is worth the, what do you say, time and effort. A translator anytime, or the patient's relative, sir, that is a person who can convey to the patient in a much better manner the lip reading part, etc., than what we can convey. So my advice would be a patient's relative the entire time. And again, few things look good in easy in movies, etc. It is not that easy, sir. At least from my part, I after taking a couple of classes, I said this is something which I won't be able to master straight away. So I won't advise, sir. I won't advise.
So thank you, Dr. Mayur, for a very
Thank
good presentation, and we congratulate you for the same. And I think Dr. Balaji,
Yeah, Mayur, there are a lot of compliments which have come up on the chat section.
Okay, sir.
I totally agree with whatever has been written in the chat section. As a
Okay.
token of our appreciation, I am presenting you the certificate. Please accept, the soft copy will reach you at the earliest.
Thanks a lot, sir. And thanks a lot again, Balaji sir and Kudwa sir, for considering me worthy enough to be part of this conference, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Rakshita, can you instruct the participants regarding the certificate?
Sir, pardon, sir?
Participants for the certificate, what they will have to do?
Okay, sir. At the last, sir, 3 o'clock, we will going to put a link of feedback, sir.
If you can inform them what you will be doing, they will be ready with that. No?
Okay, sir. At the last, sir, we are going to pop up the audible, sir. Is I audible?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Okay, sir. The link of the feedback, sir, we are going to put in the chat box, sir.
Okay.
Along with the feedback, there is a certificate.
Okay. So once they fill the feedback, they will get the certificate.
Yeah, sir. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. So we all the participants, I request to join back at 2 p.m. for the photography session. Hope to see you soon at 2 p.m. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll break
Thank
for
you, sir.
lunch.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Balaji, sir, we'll get back at 2 o'clock.
1:45 I'll be there.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Praveen, 1:45.
Yes, I'll be there.
I'll be there, sir.
I'll be there.
Thank
I'll
you.
be
Thank
there.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.